Feels like since I started this a solid minute late, I should probably, 2 minutes late. We'll cut a little off the timer. Probably. Yeah, okay, here we go. Watch Jimmy make the speed go fast. That'll work. Oh, yeah. Welcome, everybody. It's a new episode of HOSTility, a new guest, a new person to introduce you all to, somebody who I'm a tremendous admirer of. But before the music, it faded all the way off. I was going to see if I could get you to freestyle.
Dun, 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 dun. But you go, yes.
I meant more like
killer jams, man.
like
I come for
lyrics.
the music.
That's why you're here?
Yeah. Oh, I'm supposed to freestyle?
Yeah.
All right, outro. Save it for the outro.
Okay, that's good enough. We'll do it. Everybody, this is my friend Nuance Ho. That is how she would like you to refer to. I'll probably accidentally call you Kara a few times tonight, but at least it's not doxing you this time. That's always nice. You always love when somebody comes on and they're like, "Hey, what's up, so and so?" And you're like, "That's my legal name, and no one has called me that for at least 10 years. You fuckface. Why? What are you doing?" But anyway, go ahead.
I had a year of that until I did my Mormon Stories interview, and I was like, "Can I be called Nuance Ho in Mormon Stories?" And John's like, "No, that's not. You can say the F word as much as you want, but don't call yourself Nuance Ho."
Do you know the line is a little bit responsible for certain YouTubers unmasking because we don't do that. We don't do cartoon avatars on the line. And so there was at least one that I can think of, but I feel like there's a second that I'm missing who was like, I've been thinking about it anyway, and I want to be on the line. So, sure, we'll go and we'll go unmask. I don't want to take solo responsibility. I think they were already thinking they would do it. I'm talking about Vice Rhino. I don't know why I'm being fucking weird about it, but Vice Rhino
Clark Kent, Peter Parker. Yeah. We know all of the great superheroes, so why not the post-religious ones and stuff too. So
yeah, though Vice Rhino did a little bit more than just put on glasses to stay anonymous. But yeah, we'll let people come on with crazy names, but it's got to be face. There's something about like all the shit I talk to people who are like, "Wow, you're real brave," like hiding behind your cartoon avatar and you're on Twitter, like, "Wow, your anime avatar and your name is like Cowboy Butts Drive Me Nuts 2929." It's never that. That would be much more redeeming. That I'm like, I can't talk that level of shit and let us be totally anonymous if we're going to be taking calls. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yes. I heard I should put some structure to this. I'm just being an insane person. This
is HOSTility.
To take over? What's that? Yes. Please.
Take over?
Please.
This is HOSTility. This is my co-host for the evening, Jimmy Snow. Mm-hmm. You'll know him from his fake avatar where he talks a bunch of shit. And okay, you can go.
This is the show where I prove to people that I have friends. That's pretty much it. I'm very insecure about how much it must seem like I don't have friends. And so every week I go, "Look, here's a friend of mine." Suddenly I hear my voice echo a ton. What is happening? Could we turn the speaker down a little bit? What's that?
Yeah.
Let's try that. I don't know.
What does the audience have to say about it?
About hearing my voice twice. I'm sure they hate it.
Was it really bad?
It was pretty bad.
Start over.
No, we're good. It didn't overwhelm my voice, but I am auditory fixated. I just can't.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to think about anything else. And I hate my voice. That's a true fact about me. This week, I wanted to introduce you to Nuance Ho, who makes tremendous content that I think you primarily do it on TikTok, but I see you on Instagram. Is that true?
I do a little bit of everything now. I started mostly on TikTok through 2020, 2021, and built a bunch of stuff up there. And I repost everything to Instagram. And then I post longer format videos on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
like hour-long ones where I get into topics, and then I repost some of my favorite ones on YouTube Shorts. So I bounce around everywhere.
You're all over the place. I'm getting better about, I need to do YouTube Shorts way more. I did one that was like Ex-Mormon exposes Mormon coffee rule, and it got like 1 million views, and I did nothing to deserve that. And it's like I'm like showing myself using my Nespresso, and it's yeah, just whatever. And I need to do that more. Ex-Mormon content. So I should add this context for everybody. Nuance Ho is an ex-Mormon like myself. That is largely going to be the theme of tonight's program. We'll take calls from anybody about anything that they think we're ready to argue on. But Mormon-related content, oh man, if any of you Mormons are watching, and I know you are, and you want to call in and debate it with us, deal. Do it. I dare you. I dare
Not
you.
Dare.
I
invite you
dare.
for a pleasant exchange.
No, well, it'll be pleasant if everybody comes correct and honest and everything. But as soon as somebody starts being a dick, I tend to be a bit bigger dick. However, if everybody's honest and kind and we stay level-headed, it will be great. The audio stuff is happening again.
The echo's coming in?
I hate it. I think what happens is when you aren't talking for a while, there's some sort of auto feature that then starts going and looking for you, and it hears my voice out of the speakers. Yeah. Do you have headphones? Could we headphone it up?
Yeah. Do you want to give me a second?
Yeah, that's fine.
Regale the audience with some other stories.
I'll keep telling everybody here. I can even do, wrong one. That doesn't work either. Okay. Everything's broken. Nuance Ho makes ex-Mormon content. I'm an ex-Mormon. She's an ex-Mormon. It's awesome. And she is on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. There's a link tree down below. As far as other announcements go, before we get into our conversation and our questions, if people want to call in with questions about Mormonism, growing up Mormon, especially y'all get to hear my insights, I guess, all the time on Mormonism. But I specifically had the Mormon experience of being raised pretty successfully suppressing my queerness, because I am so fond of women that it didn't feel like a ton was lost just because every time I had a crush on a guy, I didn't let my brain go there. So you could say that despite not being heterosexual, I had the cis-het male Mormon upbringing experience. And you've met some other people on this channel who have had that, but we don't get to talk to a lot of ex-Mormon women who went through the Young Women's Program. Though funny enough, we'll actually be back here next week with Exmo Lex as well. So we'll have 2 ex-Mormon women in a row. The way to do it, I think. But anything specific to that topic, whatever you all want to know, or if somebody wants to call in and defend theism, defend Mormonism, whatever, we'd be happy to have that conversation. Even a polite conversation about, there are many people who are like, yeah, Mormons are wrong, but they're very nice, so shouldn't we leave them be? We'd be happy to have that conversation because we got some feelings about that. How are you?
I don't have any headphones. How's your audience? Do they hate me? I really went to I was telling Jimmy before the show that I literally set up this entire thing in my husband's office just for this interview. And now I'm feeling really embarrassed that I don't have any headphones here.
Please don't feel embarrassed. I think we're back to a workable thing. Maybe, I wouldn't use, so the Yeti mic that you have in front of you notoriously has a loud mute button. When you press it, the actuator comes after the physical hardware clicks. And so I recommend when somebody's using a Yeti, if you feel like you're going to be quiet for a while, toggle the mute on our call in the software instead of, but right now everything's great. Suddenly it's not an issue. So I think we go and just see what happens. Yeah. So I want to know, what would you say are some of the key differences between being raised as so I was explaining to everybody, I was raised with despite not being heterosexual, but raised in the cis-het Mormon experience, very enthusiastic and everything. Give us a few key differences being raised as a woman in the Mormon church.
From the male experience, the cis-het male experience, for as early as I can remember, gender roles in America generally are like, girls do this and boys do that. And from the earliest time, I remember not having a lot of ambitions. outside of just knowing that my role, the happiest that I would ever be, would to be a wife and mom. And so now that I'm out of the church, as soon as I left the church and I became an atheist, I suddenly realized how interested I was in science and evolution and all of these pursuits that my brain just kind of turned off growing up because I felt like I was never going to need them. So my ambitions, while there are very ambitious and high achieving women, was raised by my young women's, for me, that message was kind of lost, that I could be outspoken, that I could, do school plays, or I had a lot of creativity in other ways, but am I ever going to be a type of breadwinner in my household? No, I kind of need to have my sights set on just looking for a good priesthood holder who's going to lead and guide our family. That's the happiest I'll ever be. Get married in the temple, hopefully before you turn like 20. Your virginity is everything. And there was a one time where the naughtiest that I ever really got when I was a pretty good girl in the church, even though my friends and I talked about sex a lot and we were pretty outspoken kind of girls, but still, knew our place. The naughtiest I ever got was when I was 19. I went to go work at a summer camp, and my first time leaving Provo, Utah, where I was raised, basically, to a very kind of naughty environment, very Sodom and Gomorrah summer camps. If you've ever worked at a summer camp, you will know it is kids go to bed and it is like drunken orgies every night, basically. All right, that's an exaggeration, but my little Mormon girl self kind of got thrown like the frog in the cold pot of water that turns up the heat. So by halfway through the summer, I was doing a lot of sinning and still believed in the church. And by the time I got home, my parents stole my journal and they read everything that I did. And my dad took me to Jamba Juice because he knows that's my weak spot. And he just was like, I'm going to write on this Post-it note a bunch of sins. And he just wrote a bunch. He's like, drinking, smoking weed, cigarettes, sex, whatever else. He just kept writing all these different sins. And he sat me down and he said, okay, which one of these can I cross off that you didn't do? You're going to tell me right now everything that you did. And then I was like, Dad, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And then he just points to sex and he goes, just tell me. He like begs me. And he's like, just tell me this one. Tell me you didn't do this one. So knowing that your virginity and any kind of autonomy that you have about your own body and your own sexuality is really held by your dad, is really held by your future husband. And at the time, I saw a lot of beauty in that. And I luckily found a really good husband that I'm still married to. And it's hard to imagine getting married in a cult and still choosing that person. But 14 years later, I'm still with my husband. So I was able to make it through that. We were able to deconstruct the church. But it takes a lot of time. I left the church 3 years ago, but there's still a lot of understanding and coming into contact with my own feminine power, my own autonomy that was never really given to me. It was kind of owned always by somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I have an interesting question. I've talked about this a couple of times on the show, but I'm positive there are other people who have talked about it out there. So when I say like a few weeks back, I was thinking through some things and I was thinking about the difference between like what you would call toxic masculinity and perhaps what you would call toxic femininity, which I know a lot of people think I'm going to go on a men's rights thing right now. Not anything like that. It's literally about how the patriarchy convinces women to compete and hate each other and all of these other things. It's still the patriarchy's fault when I say these things. But I was thinking about these things and the way we're raised, and one of these key differences popped out. And it made me think about like, I think this is the reason why, especially within Mormonism, you see the type of competitive woman still exists within Mormonism, even as they like pretend to care about each other and lift each other up. But the like judgmental stuff about like your sluttiness and all of that stuff comes down to these key areas that men judge each other for sort of slightly different things. And our whole thing is about upholding the patriarchy and convincing the women to tell our sons to do it too. It's gross. It's really, really gross. It's a really gross, this is not an endorsement. I smile when I feel very uncomfortable. I'm realizing how weird I must look like. Yeah, and then we're just like, women, just give us your autonomy and great. I smile at funerals. I'm a weird person. Anyway, so this specific question I have regarding all of that I think is a key difference between how you would have been raised and I would have been raised in the covenant or whatever. How many women role models were you given?
I have I have a video kind of about this subject. There's a really great blog post. Don't worry, I'll get to the answer about like Dear Mormon Man. You know that one I'm talking about?
Oh, no. I was saying yeah to you saying, don't worry, I'll get to the answer. I was like, of all the people to rush you, I would be the biggest hypocrite. But go on.
He's like, are you going on a tangent now? That's for me only. No.
How dare you?
There's where they reverse all of the, like, if there was a man who grew up listening to like Queen Mosiah, and that you see all of the prophets get up and speak, and what if we flip the genders with the like minuscule roles that are kind of given to women throughout Mormonism, if there's all posters and prophetesses on the wall versus what there is now. It's just kind of the norm that you just understand that males are our authority figure, and that's their mantle, that's their stewardship from God. So it's something I never thought about before because it was just so given to you. You just think that's the way the world is. And you don't know a lot about, just the spectrums of life. You're given such a boxed in black and white view of right and wrong, gender, sexuality, all made up by a bunch of men who are from, Idaho and Utah, as if that's the soul, that's the arbiter. Those are the people that got it right, So growing up, I'm on the more lucky end. I always like to say that this is one of the reasons I am the Nuance Ho, is because I was raised by very feminist leaders. Growing up, I loved Mormonism because Mormonism to me meant like really fun girls' camp experiences and wonderful leaders who cared about us and just wanted us to live a good life. And it wasn't about the rules; it was about having a good time and loving and caring. And my friends' moms were all my young women's leaders, my primary leaders all throughout my life. And I had a much better view of sexuality and autonomy than most people get. So that's why I'm kind of in that 1% that it made me a lot more nuanced. And hoey too. So, but in terms of like the structure of the church, like I had 2 seminary teachers that were females. But at the time, if you got pregnant while you were a seminary teacher, any kids, I think it was even if you just got married, you couldn't teach full-time seminary anymore. And you would get fired from your position at the church. And that always really, I would have loved to be a seminary teacher. I was that Mormon. Like I loved seminary and I thought I wanted to be a seminary teacher at one point. But knowing that like once you get married or you have to be old enough that you're retired, that your kids are already grown,
right.
To be able to have that profession. And that was like a huge stickler in like, why can't the church give me the right to make that choice? And there's only so many times you can go through your life where every meeting is, girls camp. You have to have like priesthood leaders there to be able to be inside the church building to play basketball. I played basketball all growing up, and to be inside the church building, we had to have somebody's dad or somebody's brother open the church building for us and hang out for us there because you have to have a priesthood leader, and just things like that. Where especially growing up that you're like, I am 1,000 times %. I was very much a tomboy. I was like, I am way more mature than any of these other douchebags I hang out with. I was like, I am like the mom of the group, but I don't have the same, rights that they're given. And you're always told this benevolent sexism line that like, it's because they need it. It's because they need to mature more. And you kind of swallow that whole until you grow up to realize you're like, hey, that was because that's like a narrative that makes them have more power, not me. If it ends up with me having more power, hey, wait a second. So it took a really long time, literally up until I was like 30 to get that.
You're too evil to tear apart bread. That's the stupidest part of it. Like that's the boys get at 12 years old, they get the priesthood, and the only thing they can do is tear bread apart. And that's the thing that we can't. No, wait. They can't even tear it. They can pass it around. You're not going to tear it until they're 16. Yeah, they get to take bread. And that never
bothered me because I'm like, I'm just going to sit here drawing while you losers have to walk around, but whatever.
Yeah. The reason for the question is the thing I was noticing as I've had these conversations with more and more people is as a guy raised in the church, I was given tons of male role models, and specifically it's in the like format of be like this man, and even like role models that I knew my dad didn't quite like. Like we had this bishop in Louisiana that I was like, obviously my dad thinks he should be the bishop and not this guy. He thinks this guy's too much of a hippie. He played bass at a stake dance, and that's too obtainable. That's too relatable. He doesn't like that. but there's still like a level of like, well, it doesn't matter. You respect the bishop. That's the man with the keys to the ward and whatever. Like that's the guy. And then it's like, be like Joseph Smith, be like Orson, be like Parley, be like fucking Oliver, be like Brigham. Thank goodness we didn't take that advice. Be like, I just don't like murdering and raping as much as Brigham did. Be like
no one could.
no good person, no non-psychopath. And it's just a line of, and like, here's what masculinity is, but you don't have to have all of it. So here's like, your grandpa was great at this. Try and take that feature. And so was great like this. And my experience and what I've gathered from a lot of the women I've spoken to from the church is you get a lot of not the who you should be like, the men you should be like, you get way more examples of the women you shouldn't be like. And it's a lot of the like, don't be a slut like so-and-so. Don't be, like it's don't dress provocatively, showing your ankles in church and in sacrament meeting. It's not that bad. It's like knees. Knees is where they have a problem. It should come below the knee. These are all the women that we're telling you what they're doing wrong and not to be like. And we're pointing out these examples of how they are failing to meet the standards. Whereas men, it's much more often like even the imperfect people. Well, here's what that man excels at. That's the contrast I noticed. Is that familiar in your experience too, or were you that lucky you didn't get that experience?
I probably was just a little bit more blinded to it, but I see it now that my eyes are more opened and I'm in this space, and now it's blaring in the eyes a little bit more. But growing up, I was such like a little, smart ass tomboy. Yeah. That I just never internalized. And I always like to make this point that, like, for instance, there is this new trend of people, YouTubers, Instagram accounts that are like, stay in the church. And I just watched a Saints Unscripted episode yesterday with this new hip young account of a bunch of young hip cool kids wearing a Thrasher t-shirt who talk like surfers. And they are super hip and cool. And they're like, stay in the church. We did it. You can too. And they're like, you guys, it's like the church is like Disneyland, like you don't, there's long lines, there's annoying stuff. But when you leave Disneyland, like, do you forget if it's really the greatest place on earth, like the church is? Like, don't you just like forget the long lines? You just remember, like, if you go in the park, like if you get deep enough in the park, like you'll have a good time. And I know what they're trying to do because I tried to do that too. And it's a deeply unempathetic approach to other people's experiences and sits you in a place of privilege that you're able to kind of negotiate with your own brain, your internalization, your indoctrination, which I was able to do a little bit better when you have the type of no free will personality where you're just like, that's bullshit. I'm not going to pay attention to that in church. And I'm going to glom on to the best aspects of Jesus Christ. You can grow up and you can just be like, that's bullshit. Why doesn't everyone just do what I did? Like, why are you guys so traumatized? Why are you guys leaving the church? Like, why are you guys crying and like not having a good time? Just be like me. And so I had to realize that my experience in the church, when you're leaving the church and you're like, okay, it's not true, but I think ex-Mormons should still shut up. That's my initial reaction when I left the church was I went back on Twitter and I said, because I got in a fight because I was still conservative the day I left the church. And I went on Ex-Mormon Reddit and I got in a fight with a bunch of people because I still had purity culture bullshit. And I was fighting with a bunch of people on Ex-Mormon Reddit. And I went back on Twitter that day and I said, never mind. I said, hey, everyone, by the way, I'm leaving the church right now. And ex-Mormons are still a cult, and they all think the same. It's like, it's just because I hadn't looked at what my conditioning from the church, if my pieces of the puzzle were still true. And I had a complete lack of empathy that people had completely different experiences that inform their traumas, their reasons for leaving that have nothing to do with me. And I'm extremely privileged to have the right inputs of stuff that I'm able to not carry a lot of trauma. I don't have any, I don't have a lot of purity culture trauma. I didn't internalize a lot of bullshit. I just saw it for what it was. I thought the church was true. Yeah. And like, it's just supposed to be that way. And there's some stuff to get over there. But I'm just really grateful. Like I said, I grew up with these amazing feminist leaders. And when you're mentioning bishops, like the current bishop of my home ward right now in Provo, Utah, is one of my favorite guys. He was the DJ for all the dances growing up at the stake dances. And he fucking played like Sexy Back, which was like, and we had like fucking grinding competitions on the floor. Like, and he's our bishop now for my ward. And he's like my one of my best friend's dads, and you know what I mean? Just like, I come from like good people who are just like, forget the rules. Like, let's have a good time, you know?
Yeah.
And my dad, as a matter of fact, is really rare too, because my mom and dad are both converts, and my dad was a hippie and converted to the church. And so did my mom, basically, when they were younger. And my dad is just like, the church kind of makes you a good person, but you know, you don't really pay attention. Like, my dad's never given a talk in his entire life about the church. He just likes to talk about his favorite poets and books. Like, he's just like one of those guys that just like likes the church, but doesn't know anything about it, you know? And so I didn't dogma from like a patriarchal father who told me I had to obey the rules. I just probably couldn't marry a black guy or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
probably came out in some other horrible way.
That's my dad was the very patriarchal, and like you describing grinding competitions at dances, not in any stake my dad was ever in. And it was literally like he would get in between, even when he like wasn't in a position to do so. I guess he's always been like at minimum high council, but he would get in between like the DJ and be like, all right, so listen, we need a set list, and know that any song you put on there, we may call you into high council, and you have to read the lyrics to the high council and stake presidency. And they're like, that's, and so
like, I'm bringing sexy back. Yeah. And all you MFers don't know how to act.
Yeah. Now I feel like I think of doing that, and I'm just like, oh, let me make the playlist. I'll come in and let me come read WEP to the stake presidency. I'm super down. Just watch their heads
I just had
explode.
like the biggest cringe flashback. Anytime my mom was ever had a calling where she was in charge of the youth, it always went terribly, because my mom, I love her. She's a great woman. She's just not cool with the kids. She's not cool with the kids. I'm sorry. I just had a big cringe flashback on my mom at a stake dance for New Year's Eve, holding up our house clock from our house. She just like took it off the wall and just like held it on the stage for all of the kids in this big gymnasium, just to be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just Carol holding a clock with a bunch of teenagers sends me back there. That's how much fun we have at stake dances until somebody turns on the swearing tunes. So now I painted the picture for you guys.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we weren't allowed to dance where if we were slow dancing, it doesn't have to be you and I. Imagine Garrett and I always wanted to dance with Garrett, but wasn't allowed. Anyway, that's a real person. I'm actually saying, God, the stories I have about the crush I was ignoring that I had on Garrett. Anyway, I got in trouble for some of the ways that internalized crush was exhibited. In fact, I was going to say, when you're telling the story about like your best times, my best times in the church is when I was sinning. I felt a boob behind the seminary building, and then Garrett, I seductively crawled toward during this game called Baby If You Love Me, Will You Please Smile, where they put a bunch of horny teenagers in a circle, and they have you sit on each other's lap and go and try and make the other one smile. And then anyway, I don't remember if it was a die roll or what it was, but I was meant to make Garrett smile. So rather than go over and just sit on his lap like everybody else would, I got on all fours and started doing like a seductive crawl toward, and they ended the whole game because they said it was inappropriate. But the reason it was inappropriate was everyone already pretty much knew Garrett was gay. Wouldn't have happened if it was any other person. It was literally... It was literally like, on the surface, they're just like, that's too far. You're making this sexual game too sexual. Sit on somebody's lap, look them in the eye and say, baby, if you love me, would you please smile? Anyway, whatever. Horny fucking teenagers, you idiots. But come to find out later, well, they were like, you could have been tempting Garrett and his demons, and we're not going to say. Anyway, Garrett's a lovely guy. Definitely came out of the closet and went and lived in a different country. I don't remember what I interrupted that story for, what point I was going to make about before that.
Sometimes you have a wild time. Sometimes you have a wild time in growing up as a Mormon youth, and that was the highlight of your life.
We were talking about, but we were also talking about like the music and the dance. I don't know. Anyway, my dad was a total fucking fascist and shut down anything that was remotely fun or enjoyable. Oh, we couldn't dance. So if Garrett and I were dancing, we wouldn't have been allowed to. But let's say we were allowed to, we would have only been allowed to dance where like his hand on my shoulder, my hand, one hand on the waist, but then the other hands have to be this style, where it's like, I can't get far back enough. The arm out. Yeah, you weren't allowed. you weren't allowed to do what they would call like hug dancing. Like you couldn't do, even with the space apart, you weren't allowed to do hands on the hips and then both hands around the arms. And then you certainly weren't allowed to close that gap. You weren't allowed to have any physical touch between the two of you.
Close the gap, down the crack, as they say. I just made that up, but
that's
Mormons
good.
use it.
That's really good. I really love that. Close the gap, down the crack. Anyway, should we take calls? Do you want to see what other people want us to talk about as opposed to all
I do.
We could do tangents for 4 hours. I'm positive you
and the sound is still okay?
Yeah. Every now and then you blip, but I think that's probably just internet. I don't know what to do about that.
You blip too, so.
Yeah, but I think in both cases it's you blipping. I'm hardlined at the moment. Though we did break on Sunday. We had the whole stream go down because I live in.
Oh, Mr. Perfect, huh?
I know. I have fiber optic internet, but I also live in a rural town in north of Austin, and so it's kind of like during the week when they're there in the office to maintain everything, it works great. But every now and then on the weekends, things go down, and they don't really work weekends. We don't really. We'll take care of it when we get back in on Monday. It sucks. Anyway. Zach in Denver is an ex-evangelical Lutheran or an ex-evangelical Lutheran. Same thing. Zach, you are on the line with Jimmy and Nuance Ho. Give it to us.
Hi, I just wanted to call in because I had a quick question. And I don't know how similar Mormon theology is to Christian theology, but I constantly have like a kind of a thing where like I think about heaven and I think about wanting to see my close family and friends and stuff like that have passed away. I want to see them again. But I also have a problem where I don't really believe that it's true because of all the scientific and like evolutionary evidence and stuff like that is quite clear. So I also have like an overarching fear of hell that I don't know if Mormons have the same kind of struggle there or if either of you have ever had that. But I was just wondering like if you guys had any like tips or techniques of like how to deal with that.
Go on.
So really interesting. Last night I did a Mormon Stories episode with John Larson, who's a famous ex-Mormon podcaster, and he talked about this baked-in fear of religion, of not only do they obviously sell you kind of the solution that you need, everyone is afraid of death. That's everything. Everybody in the entire world is going to die. We all know that traumatic experience is going to come, and they're selling you the solution of how to circumvent that through their processes, through their religion, through their rituals, through your adherence. And every different religion has a different brand of that. And so in the Mormon context, it is going to be a lot different than the Christian context. But the overlining, to me, through line is still there. Whether in Mormonism, the threat is more so that your family will be taken away from you. You'll be in different separate tiers in heaven. And your family will be, out creating worlds and to married to their spouse, creating planets, living out a new posterity as gods. And if you fall away, you go to utter loneliness, to this outer darkness place. And so it's this threat of not a burning hellfire, but more of a threat of isolation. And so you take that real life trauma that every human being, where we don't quite know how we got here over millions of years, and all of our species has been trying to figure out why we're here, what we're doing here, and what could potentially come after this traumatic experience, where people that we love die, where we will go and see them. And so personally for me, when I became an atheist, the very next day, my dad went into the hospital, and I had just listened to Rationality Rules the night before and realized, hey, I think I'm an atheist. And then the next day, my dad is getting open heart surgery, and I hadn't yet come to terms with what that meant, if I would ever see him again. How do I deal with the idea of never seeing people that I love again? And I really take a lot of solace and comfort in the idea that I could have been born in any different place in the entire world, and I could have got a different story, a different religious story about what my dad, where I will see him again, what that means to circumvent this trauma. But that is just a manufactured convenient, comfortable way for our human psyche to be able to deal with this impending doom, this impending trauma, and to be able to lean into your humanness and not be so afraid and not have to always be asking for the answer that it has to come and that you need to have some comfortable story, or if you do the right things and say the right prayers, you'll be able to see that right person, because that's every religion around the world. We all deal with that as human beings. And I just lean into that joy, that peace that I get 90 years on this earth, maybe, if I'm lucky, and the experiences that I have here. I don't know if there'll be a bonus round of something of where this intelligence could go, and I don't make any kind of projections about it, but I feel a lot of comfort and in just taking that this is a natural part of human existence, grief, loss, and to try to put a Band-Aid on that, to try to tell myself a narrative that's not true, that doesn't do me any favors. That's my take.
Yeah.
That
makes a lot of sense.
Zach, the funny thing with when you were asking about like the comparable hell stuff, Mormonism, Nuance Ho sort of laid out some of the things, but they actually like are also pretty obscure about a lot of the things. So that whole outer darkness thing, if you ask 5 different Mormons who goes to outer darkness, you'll get 5 different answers. And the concept of like the difference between spirit prison and outer darkness is this whole thing. And spirit prison's for the people who weren't baptized, but then when somebody's baptized for them, they can go to these other places. And then this ultimate separation that of course Satan's going to get, or maybe Satan's going to be destroyed completely. Again, different answers from different people, but you can get that total separation, not just from your family, but from like all of anything. You just be alone for eternity. And it's funny because there's still a fear of hell among some Mormons. And also the Book of Mormon references people basically burning in hell and stuff. And so there's still like, I remember citing at one point to my therapist, like, that I wouldn't probably commit suicide even though I want to, because I was afraid of going to hell.
That's really familiar. That's really familiar. I also have a therapist and I've said similar things.
Yeah.
But I've been in like dark places like that. So
which is almost a meaningless thing to say in Mormonism. It's like depending on which version you're getting, you never really run out of chances until well after the millennia and everything.
True.
And so, yeah, it as far as like deconstructing from all of that, it's hard because a lot of people want to replace the concept of the comfort they got from being religious about dying. Like, I'm not really going to die. And so then when you don't believe in that anymore, as I think when I die, I die. I have no reason to believe my brain will do anything that it ever did before I was alive, after I was alive. It seems clear to me that consciousness exists within the brain, and when we die, my expectation is for nothing, a bunch of nothing. The universe essentially ends from my perspective the moment I die. I don't know that that's not supposed to suck. And so that's one of the things that frustrates me is when people are like, well, how do you replace that comfort? I don't know that you're asking about potentially how to replace denial with a different kind of denial. And I don't have anything to say to people about like, well, here's how as an atheist, I now maintain my religious denial of death. To me, I'm like, yo, I'm not going to get comfort from thinking that I'm going to see my family again when they die. I'm going to actually mourn their death. I think it's more respectful to do that. It's super sad that this person, I'm talking more about my chosen family because they're going to be members of my actual family that die, that I'm going to be like, whatever, another day, and life goes on. But I'm going to mourn the people who die that I care about. When they die, I'm going to experience a sense of loss and acknowledge that I lost them. And then I'm going to cry my eyes out and I'm going to be sad. And your brain recognizes those triggers of crying and feeling sad as, hey, here's a thing we got to work on and start healing and stuff. And it's actually part of why virtually everybody to some degree recovers from deaths of even really close loved ones, because your brain knows when you're having all of that grief that it can't sustain that forever and it takes care of it over time. But like, I don't know, man, if I die, I'd really rather a bunch of people be sad about it than be in denial. I think it's more respectful. When I say I die, I mean when.
That's a fantastic way of putting it, of like replacing denial with another form of denial. I've never really thought of it that way, but that's like very accurate.
Yeah. Thank you. Every now and then I come up with something profound. Somebody put it on a t-shirt.
I got to tell that to my mom because my mom's like a hardcore still Lutheran, right? And she gets a lot of comfort from the fact like she'll get to see her mother again, like my grandma who passed away.
Yeah.
And even that, it's like really you're just prolonging the sense of mourning. Is like you're just prolonging it until you die pretty much, and then you find out that it's not really that. So
well, no, you don't. You don't find out. When you die, you just die. That's the hard part.
I guess.
That's the hard part. Is like there's that idea that I had to get over at some point where I'm like, oh, how embarrassed my dad's gonna be when he dies and nothing happened. Like that's the reality. Like when he dies and realizes my dad will never probably, unless he does it during life, will never have the realization that he was wrong and I was right.
Turns off.
I'm not going to get to enjoy that moment as douchey as it is to say I would enjoy it in the first place. I would enjoy it a little, specifically with him. You know, his bullshit ruined our family and our lives. But you know, we unfortunately when we say like until we die and everybody sees, nobody sees when you die. You don't get to have that experience of I fucked this up. In fact, if anything, you probably have something more like a spiritual experience because your brain is doing shit like it's on LSD times 100 around the time that you're dying, and all those chemicals are draining to the back of your head and you're firing electricity through them and all that shit. You probably right before it all turns off think you're more validated than ever. For all I fucking know, the dreams you'd be having would be insane. And then it turns off and you have no realization. It's sort of sad, the position we're in where we never get to tell you so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you know, I really appreciate everything that you guys have said. I just want to add one more thing before I go. What you guys said about the different ways of like in Mormonism of being like a man versus a woman or being a boy versus a girl and being raised is like also very similar to how my church was with Lutheranism is like, everybody was very, very strict and very like, if you're a guy, you do this. If you're a guy, you're the head of the household, like believe your dad over your mom. Like your mom can say something, but she's probably not right, you know?
Well, and it's like, not, in Mormonism, it's not just your mom like isn't going to be as right as often as your dad. It's if they are in conflict, he can call her to submission and say, I disagree, but I'm the man. So you do what I'm saying. That's literally like doctrinal. You go to the temple and you commit to if ever the man says God wants us to do this versus what you want, you do what God and the man wants.
Right. And like just deconstructing that over time of like for myself, it was really difficult. Like one of my first relationships with like my girlfriend, it was a hard time learning to have her be able to like do her own things and like I'm not always correct. And it's just odd after getting out of that and then like realizing like no, there's an other person there and like that other person has their own like wants and needs and things that they want to do in life, and like you're not in charge of their life, it's just you're in charge of your own. And like you got to make decisions together. So I appreciate everything you guys said.
Thank you, Zach.
Yep. Sounds like you're on the right path because again, religion is so archaic and it comes from this space of like maybe it was necessary for survival to think very black and white and that there isn't a lot of nuance. There's not a lot of spectrum there. And it's really easy just to put people in two boxes and run from the lions or whatever the fuck, you know, like there's this instinct to just say women do this and men do this and that'll sort things out. And it doesn't take into account the authenticity of every human being. Like if you want to say, you know, you're a child of God or whatever, what does that mean? It just means that you're a robot that's just spit out of a factory. It was like, that takes away the individuality that I would hope that a God would want us to be able to express and like our actual human nature and the psychology being interacting with the world. It completely wants to fly in the face of how nuanced and what a spectrum the world is. And you don't need it.
Worse than you're 7 years old and you're told you're a slave to Christ, you know, that's also not very good. We
got a guy who calls in and tells the screener that his name is Slave of Christ, by the way. It's fun.
Oh no.
Yeah. He calls the Sunday show a lot. Zach, I got a question for you. What was the high in Denver today?
The high?
Yeah, the weather.
Like 30 something.
Yeah, it was 53 in Texas where I am right now. You know that I'm from Denver, right?
Oh, you are? Oh, no way.
I lived there literally a year ago. Right now, I was living in Littleton.
Oh, nice. I live in Parker right now, so
Ooh,
not
that's a nice
necessarily
place.
in Denver, but
Yeah. Parker's
yeah.
nice though. Parker's real nice. Our storage unit was in Parker, actually, as I recall. Does anyone else want us to talk more about Denver and where I stored things? Zach, thank you so much for calling.
Of course.
And thank you for reaffirming my decision to move away from there with your 30-degree high.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good one.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Fuck, I had something I wanted to ask you after the call, and I've lost it. I don't know. Don't forget, check out Nuance Ho's link tree. By the way, if you're in the live chat being all brave, actually call in. Show me how brave you are.
Is my video and audio still coming in okay?
Yeah.
Am I getting choppy?
It can chop a little bit every now and then, but it's overall pretty good. If you want, hit the refresh. We'll see if it makes a difference. Hit refresh on your browser. See if it changes anything there. While she does that, I do just want to say, Garrett, if you're out there, I'm still open to the idea. I don't know. Call me.
Are we back on talking about Garrett again?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about how sweet, like, he was just the sweetest guy. He was the sweet. I also got in trouble once because, like, we were just saying goodbye at a function and I just kissed him on the forehead and his dad like stared at me with like daggers and then somebody like sort of like scooted me away. Anyway, forehead kisses. You can't do that. He's already struggling enough.
Yeah.
What a sweet
Wow.
boy.
You had quite the erotic, like, I don't know anyone has that many good stories taking place basically in Mormon circles.
It was interesting. It was an interesting time. What's funny is I dated a Mormon. I dated one Mormon and sort of like reconverted her. She was already like not going to church much and stuff. She ended up getting married in the temple years later. So I very much regret this. I have no way to figure out where she is or what she's up to. I hope she's since seen the light. But I dated one Mormon. Actually, technically two, but the other one was like for 10 days. And on day 8, we were on the phone and I was my little 14-year-old self. Wasn't even supposed to be in a relationship because of my dad's rules, but my little 14-year-old self on the phones with her and she's like, oh, I love you. And what would, if this went as far as marriage, like 14 years, because you're just cringy 14-year-old.
That's what you're all thinking about. I mean, young women's, you're trying on wedding dresses. We had a young women's activity where we took cookbooks and like wrote down recipes. Like, I'm going to hold on to this fucking index card for the next 10 years. Like everything is about heterosexuality and marriage. Yeah.
But then my sexual journey began basically right just before my 15th birthday. I was like, I can't resist anymore. And so then there was a few years of just being a hypocrite, telling other kids they shouldn't even masturbate. Meanwhile, I'm meeting up with my girlfriend after school so we can give each other hand jobs. Fucking like, but don't masturbate. God doesn't want. I'm telling all of you Christians and you. That was pretty much just Christians. There weren't really many atheists in my Wyoming high school, but like, masturbation is wrong. And yeah, just fucking wild shit. By the way, that number is 720-619.
Boring.
It is. 720-619-2288, 720-619-2288. There's also a web link in the description if you want to call from somewhere. We've got other calls. We'll get there, but there are plenty of lines open right now. If somebody else wants to call in and ask anything about Mormonism, deconversion, theism, whatever else. But yeah, that it was a beautiful place to live in hypocrisy and I just was the cringiest teenager in high school, just running around telling everybody how to be a good moral person, not following any of those rules for myself, which of course is what everybody says is the reason why I ended up leaving the church. I just wanted to sin.
Just wanted to do I don't know, ride your own amusement park. Why wouldn't you? Come on, guys.
Yeah. But that's the only, I have not dated since I was 14 years old, a Mormon or an ex-Mormon. I realized that earlier this year. I was like, I've never even had an ex-Mormon significant other. This is so strange. I've been such a slut. And I mean that in a very positive way. And yet somehow didn't.
You're talking to Nuance Ho. I know.
That's right.
We reclaim the word, right?
Yeah. Hell yeah. I want to call myself a whore, but I only aspire to whoredom. One day, I hope. I haven't made it yet. It was a bizarre realization where I was like, man, being ex-Mormon is so important to me. And I've made so many ex-Mormon friends because you have that baseline. And I've never dated an ex-Mormon. So anyway, Garrett, if you're out there, let's talk to...
Garrett is really... He's running to the phone. Somebody's telling him he's like leaving on a train right now to go to like, the military, some big job. I don't know.
I think he might live in Japan.
Jimmy's looking for you.
I hope that's true. We're going to talk to Sarah in California, a pagan atheist who wants to talk about anger when deconverting.
Go for it, Sarah.
Sarah, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, how are you guys?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I really hope that Garrett hears your
Thank you.
enamored plea to him.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Sarah, what did you want to talk about? Go ahead and give it to us.
So I was raised evangelical Christian, and I left the church probably 15, 17 years ago, something like that.
Hey, Sarah, do you have speakerphone or the show on in the background or something?
No, I don't. But I kept hearing your show even after they put me on hold, and I wasn't sure why.
Yeah, that was on purpose.
Because I didn't have it on at all.
Yeah, that was on purpose. So you're not on speakerphone right now?
I'm not. No, it's just my cell phone.
Let's try switching to speakerphone and see what happens.
Okay, that's speakerphone. Is that any better?
Nah, it's the same. All right, just switch back. Do whichever one you prefer. We'll deal with it.
Sorry. We don't have greatest cell coverage here sometimes.
No, it's all good.
But it's the only coverage.
It's all good. I'm just hearing an echo. And as I've mentioned, I'm neurotic about audio stuff. Anyway, Sarah, go ahead. And sorry for the interruption. Go ahead and finish your point there.
Yeah. So I left the church a while ago now at this point, but I still have like a lot of like really heated anger about being indoctrinated into something that was so destructive and so false, just demonstrably false in every way possible. And it caused a lot of like religious trauma and stuff that, I'm still working through with therapists and medication and all the ways. But, there's just so much to get through, and I still feel so angry about it. And I have a lot of family specifically, but also friends who are still very devout in their beliefs. So the subject comes up a lot with the people that I'm around. And I didn't know if you guys had any suggestions about how to deal with that in a healthy way.
Jimmy, you go first.
Therapy, because otherwise I'm not dealing with any of it in a healthy way. Like, I don't know. It's I'm full of rage and anger, and I'm fighting people all the time. And I don't know. See, here's the weird thing. Like, whenever people talk to me about specifically, like, how do I handle my family in this situation? That's the hard one, because I'm not handling my family. Like,
right, yeah.
It's sort of this weird thing where, like, people will be like, hey, I want to convince my parents that their religion is bullshit. Well, you know who I haven't convinced? My fucking parents. They're the ones I can't. They know where all my buttons are, and they're my parents. So they have this like inherent thing of like, you used to poop and I had to clean it up. So whatever you think, I can just dismiss on the fact that I used to wipe your asshole. Like, that's which is sort of an inherent thing that technically all parents have, where it's sort of like the respect for your children only goes so far because you taught them everything. And so if they deviate off of that, you can basically just go like, well, they're not following my guidance. But my parents take it to such an extreme. So like, as far as my family goes, we talk about losing our families, being religious and stuff. But in the case of my family loss, technically I'm the one who have cut off everybody who in my family I have hard cut off. They started treating me differently. They started pushing me away in a lot of ways. They started having conversations about me without me. They started doing shitty stuff. They started being passive aggressive. But the person who said, as of today, I'm no longer I'm going full no contact with this brother and then this brother or parents or whatever. I'm the one who's put all those boundaries in place. So it's sort of hard to say, like, if you're doing things healthily and you're trying to work through things in therapy and stuff, you can't force the other side to be healthy. No matter how healthy you are, you can't trick someone else into therapy. I wish you could, but you can't. And so it's like, it's at the end of the day, it's kind of like you got to set down boundaries and be an adult and be like, hey, here's how I want us to have a relationship, and here's what I want out of that relationship. But look, here are the boundaries. If you can't respect these, the other option is no relationship. And then you have to stick to it. And it sucks, but it's sort of the way it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, would you say the crux of your question has to do with coming to terms with just how much is a lie and just the big pill to swallow, that everything was just kind of based on a lie that you were indoctrinated with?
Oh, did I answer the wrong question?
I want to make sure that's all good.
I do that.
Yeah. That's definitely a big part of it, but more, I guess for me specifically, it's more that I feel like it was so harmful to me, and this was put upon me by, my parents and the community around me who were supposed to be watching out for me and caring for me. And I guess that's probably a little bit more of my specific anger.
Right. So if you don't know who I am, I used to work at a podcast called Mormon Stories, and we would have people with all different backgrounds come in and tell their stories, sometimes for 8 hours. And the people that I was able to talk to the most were people who were able, you can't always talk to people. You can't always be able to tell your story and really be able to come to terms with everything that was a lie, every way you weren't protected, unless you really feel seen and really feel like somebody's there to listen to you. And so where Mormon Stories, the reason the audience is so big is because people feel seen when they hear a story that's like theirs, and then the person telling it has this great cathartic experience where they're able to get it off their chest. And so getting through the anger stage, for what I know that's worked in my space, is really being able to be in a community of people where you feel seen, where you don't have to hold in that pain, that trauma, that anger, and that there are other people that meet you in that space that have said, I've gone through that too, and you're able to share stories. And so if you have a community like that, whether it's online or preferably in person, or even just a podcast that you listen to, where you're like, oh, that person's story is like mine, I don't have to feel so alone. And I think the anger sometimes comes from like this happened to me and I'm not going to be able to overcome that. And there's this perfect definition in your mind of like, my life would have been like this if this person didn't do this and this person didn't do that. But just sitting with that is the way that things went for me. My parents converted to the church, and I have to take the good with the bad. I have to say, at least I had this, but I didn't have this. But now that I have come to terms with it all, I am in an empowered space to take back that power, and it doesn't have to look like a final destination. If you ever have this idea in your head, you're like, I can't wait until I get to the not be angry point. Just sit with the anger. Just be able to be a person who feels your feelings in a space where other people feel their feelings with you, and you cry and you mourn the loss of what could have been. And then you hold space for others while they hold space for you. And then one day you, like I did, you do wake up and you're like, I'm not angry anymore. I'm in a space now where I'm just incredibly empathetic for how we as a species have used narratives and used stories, and how there is a sickness in our human brain that strives for power over protection of children, for power over giving people their autonomy. And that's a sickness in our human spirit. And I can recognize it. I hold gratitude that I'm in a space to be able to see that without holding resentment, that this is the way human beings are. And I can move forward through that space. And then sometimes you wake up one day and you're like, we're all humans. We're all doing the best. And when you know better, now you do better. And
right.
That's people I know and how we've kind of worked through it.
Yeah. I like all that.
Well, thank you. That's encouraging to hear, just that you've gotten to that place. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Feel your feelings. Nothing wrong with that.
Also.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Sarah. There's something interesting about, like, when you bring up the anger stuff, there are people out there, my anger doesn't go away. It just changes. Its focus changes. especially like being an activist and stuff. And there have been people lately who sort of do this thing where they sort of talk down to the concept of the angry atheist. And I think I get what they're talking about, maybe a stereotype, the people who are angry that other people think they're smart or something, like, and just want to yell at everybody about how stupid they are and all that sort of shit. And I get that. I get saying like, that's stupid and beyond, like, but just the concept of, they'll just shit on the concept of being for like an angry atheist. And it takes everything to not just like then be an angry atheist and tell them to go fuck themselves. Because you're like, when should I stop being angry that my family was destroyed by a pedophile 200 years ago? How long is the right amount of time to be angry about how religion stole my family from me and my opportunity, and as a result of that has stolen my ability in a lot of ways to connect with people? The ways in which my family stuff plays out in my personal day-to-day and my inability to feel permanently connected. I've told people this. I have this whole fucking thing where like, when I meet somebody, it's like there's a sensation that there's a clock above their head and it's counting down. And it's counting down to the point that they'll just sort of be done with me. Not necessarily like leave in a huff, but it's like our relationship's over. But the clock's invisible. I can't see it. I can just sense it's ticking down. And it's like, it's this sort of abandonment type of thing from like the people who were supposed to love me and protect me. Not only did they not protect me, they were the harm. But they did it thinking they were doing it in the name of protection. So when am I supposed to stop being angry that that happened to me and is now currently happening to my younger siblings and is also currently happening to nieces and nephews? And when is that anger? And then once we're done with that, when is the anger supposed to go away? How long am I allowed to be angry that I'm in a state right now that will do their best to stop Garrett and I from getting married if such a thing should present itself? How long am I allowed to be mad about that before I'm being an irrational, angry atheist? How long do I get to, we do a show once a week where trans people take calls about trans issues. It's like this show, but it's only hosted by trans people. And these people are now my chosen family and friends. And not only do I get to hear people call them and shit on them, I get to watch as all of these assholes are gaining prominence in the world only on the backs of shitting on trans people. Matt Walsh is only famous because he shits on trans people as a religious conservative. And my atheism and my humanism and the fact that I'm not religious is what allows me to love these people and listen to them and care about them and not like stop myself from. So how long am I allowed to be angry about that? What's the amount of time? I'd hate to just be an angry atheist. And so I just, you mentioning like anger as a religious person, for me, it doesn't go away. It just redirects. It just moves to a different thing at any given time. And I'm sort of like, you figure out how to deal with the anger, and right now you're watching it. I deal with the anger by talking about it nearly every fucking day of the week. And I call people or people call us rather. It's a call-in show. We don't usually make calls out, though we have a recent idea that will require us to. But I talk to people and I say, hey, this is harmful. This is harmful. This is harmful. If you disagree, call in and tell me why. The one that's like really up my ass lately is astrology. And I'm trying to get somebody to finally call in and defend it, because that shit is an inherently bigoted system. It is a system of discrimination based on arbitrary characteristics. When has that ever gone wrong?
I'm with you.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I got all pumped up and hyped, and now I feel like I'm going to have gas. I moved around too much.
Do you want me to get pumped up and hyped about like a much more nuanced version of that, which I understand, and I'll take it in I'll take like an angry, sweeter view of it.
Yeah.
Just like in like a relationship breakup, and you're angry, that things didn't go, and you feel an injustice in any sort of form. And I always try to look at things from a systems point of view of, the anger of any political activist or whatever, when they see an injustice going down, is what moves the needle for our entire civilization to progress forward, to give people more rights. And whether it's in, workers' rights spaces or racist, like white supremacy, you know what I'm talking about, like civil rights spaces, whatever kind of, just anger towards a system that can we can collectively look at our traumas and look at the injustices and marginalizations that have happened to different people of different backgrounds. And if that anger can be collected in a way that is actually moving the needle forward, that's always the bigger, beautiful picture. But for the individual, you're never going to feel connected. But I just believe that, like, as a human species, you know what I mean? Like, we are connecting with more people over the internet, and that we're able to see and empathize with people of different points of view now. And that this anger doesn't have to be so isolated. It feels like it's more connected into a bigger movement of people saying, yeah, this religion is bullshit. You think that too? Oh, I think that too. And like, our anger is actually utilizing something. It's not just you discover the church isn't true in a cabin by yourself and you spend 50 years chopping wood being pissed about it. Like, there is an actual collective unification to this type of anger. And then to the other point of how long should it last? That's the greatest, my favorite thing about leaving religion was the hardest thing. My weaknesses became my strengths, if you know what I mean, Jay. The hardest thing about leaving became the best thing. The hardest thing was not knowing where to go for my intuition about, you know, what's right or wrong, because I always believed that when I said a prayer, that was being answered by a loving Heavenly Father, and whatever's going on in my brain was a symbol of, you know, what He wanted me to do, and following the promptings of the Holy Ghost. Then you lose your faith in God and you're like, I don't know how to choose anything. I don't know where that is. But then that trauma, that experience of kind of feeling like a computer without an operating system now is the most beautiful part about being in touch with an intuition that was kind of taken away from you, that was superseded by this other system for its own gain, for its own perpetuation, without taking your needs into account. So you take your needs into the account, you take into the system that you came from, the people who are still in it, and you develop your own intuitive guide to right and wrong based on what causes less harm to the people around you. And only you can know that answer. Only you can know when this anger is going to be righteous and justified, and something you want to think about, and something that I forgot to make this point earlier, but nothing good really happens when you're when you're overwhelming yourself with too much. And since the system of religion, like Mormonism, there's 1,000 lies. There's 1,000 things that you and I could talk about. There's 1,000 ways that we were lied to, every historical point of view, every way that they've misused money, every way that they've harmed LGBTQ people, right? Like, there's a million ways that you could fixate on all of those different aspects. And when you look at it, it's overwhelming, and it causes this justified amount of anger. And it's only for the individual person to be able to work through that at their pace, knowing what's right for them, and given the permission to feel their feelings for the first time, taking that autonomy back, that you have a righteous amount of anger and you get to decide how you're going to utilize that, when it's actually useful, or what you want to piece apart, what you want to think about. You get to decide. You don't have to read your scriptures every day. You don't have to be forcing the system anymore. So you take on a new, you go out into the world with as much empathy and trying to reduce harm as you'd go on this journey of healing without a surefire destination. That's how I put it.
That said, I do recommend everybody watch The Line every day and send us 10% of your income on Patreon. Anyway, can you imagine?
I've heard that one before. I fell for that one once.
Yeah, I just, let's try and, how can I make The Line into an MLM? That would be the way to go. That would be good.
Jimmy, no.
I enjoy the opportunities I get on this channel to not just talk about the theists who frustrate me, but also the atheists who frustrate me. And so it was nice to be able to have that moment and go, and by the way, if you're one of these atheists that talk down to people who are angry atheists, or the concept of being an angry atheist, you can very much go fuck yourself. I enjoy those opportunities. I don't want to only dog on theism while we're here. Anyway, more calls, shall we?
Everyone's on a journey, Jimmy. I have no judgment. Whatever anyone wants to do.
I love the voice that you put on for that. I didn't know you do voices until this moment, and you're winning me over. Already I was won over it, but I'm won over even more.
I did this one TikTok once where I was impersonating a Mormon blogger. Yeah. And funnily enough, the voice turned out to be like the Catherine O'Hara voice from like Schitt's Creek, which I didn't realize because I don't watch Schitt's Creek.
David.
But it's like... if you're having doubts about your faith, all you really need to do is just think about the church like a puzzle piece. Every piece tells you that the church is true, and we just need more puzzle pieces.
This is traumatizing me.
What?
This is awful. Also, totally unrelated. Why do all of the B channels on Instagram have the same voice? It's like 3 different famous B channels, and all 3 of them, it's 3 women, and the way they say the word bees is especially, I don't know why it bothers me. They're always sort of whispering, and they're like, today I went out and I found the bees. And then and there's just something about it, and I've been trying to put my finger on it lately, and it's disturbing me.
Maybe they're a cult. Maybe that's their initiation.
Bees
Maybe I'm
are
not
a
thinking
cult.
outside the box.
You heard it here first. Let's do a few more calls, and then we'll get to the super chats. As always, we'll read any super chat of $5 or more at the end of the show. Fucking
Cheapskates, out of here.
Mormons take 10%. YouTube takes 30%. Of super chats. Ugh. My goodness, but still send it to us. It's how we pay for the call-in system and stuff. It's why we can do these shows. I can do this ego-boosting show every week and prove to everyone I have friends. What are you vaping over there? Is that what you're trying to hide doing?
Over there. I'm trying to quit. Just be quiet, all right?
Okay. I was going to say, just vape on, just do it in front of everybody. Nobody here's going to judge you.
My kids will see you. They'll be like, Mom, ugh.
Oh, sorry for calling you out for it. I didn't know about all that. I thought you were trying to like, do you remember the old chocolate rain, some say and others feel like one of the first memes?
I'm singing chocolate rain in a microphone right over here as we're doing this.
I was just thinking of like putting that same little asterisk he would put up when he would lean away. He would lean away from the mic and he'd go, I'm leaning away to take a breath. And
Kara's fucking vaping again. She was off all month, and then she had a bad day, and we're back off the wagon or on the wagon, whatever that is.
I'll tell you what I think about taking up vaping again. I haven't smoked in like 10 years, but I'm like, well, why not? Life's not so great. What am I afraid of? Dying in this world? Pfft. Anyway, you have kids though, so that makes sense. Stay healthy and alive for your kids.
Have 2 minutes. Right now I'm on all of them.
I don't know what it broke out. What'd you say? You what?
I said I have too many indulgences.
What do you want to share anymore?
Showing my shoulders.
Okay.
Great.
Very judgmental right now over here. I
had pretty much all day just to kind of hang out at my house and clean and stuff. And I took way too big of a bong hit. Just one of those where I was like, I just wanted a teeny tiny one, just a little.
Yeah.
And it was supernova. It was too intense, and I luckily came down like right as we started the show. Now things like that I could probably do less of.
I'd love to hear like Mormons try and speculate about what my number one indulgence is now, and I'm as ex-Mormon as I've ever been. I've been out of the church for forever.
Hoodies.
No, it's woodworking when I should be doing my other job. That's it. That's my number one indulgence. I'll be fucking like making a tabletop, and I'll be like, I really should be editing clips right now, but I don't care. That's my number one indulgence.
I saw your bed frame that you made.
Well, you didn't actually. You said you saw. I was going to say thank you, like you gave me a compliment. All you said was you saw it, though.
I saw it on Instagram.
I got ahead of assuming that you were going to compliment it. Brom in England. Hello, Brom.
Hey, Jimmy. How's it going?
I just realized, I think that I've had you on the line for the last like 3 minutes.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's all good though.
Oh, well, no harm done. No harm done.
You didn't sing or anything. I do that every time, literally almost every show, the guest shows up as I'm in the middle of singing whatever's bouncing. Was I singing when you got here today? Yep.
No, I didn't hear it though, so.
That's all good.
As we know, I didn't witness it. It didn't happen.
I basically am doing it all the time anyway. Brom, what did you want to call and ask about?
So, I'm Brom. I don't know if you saw the last episode of reading Joseph Smith.
I didn't.
You weren't on.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't on. I didn't. I was seething.
I was on it.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool. Well, I'll meet you, I guess, next Sunday then.
So I'll meet you there. I was just thinking about what you were talking about with the whole relationships thing, and especially from my perspective as someone who was converted at the age of 24, so I'd already had an active sex life before that.
Yeah.
and there's the sort of weird unspoken expectation that, so you're going to live the rest of your life as a eunuch, right? Because they do absolutely nothing to sort of integrate you or make you feel like there's ever going to be a relationship for you. It's like feels like very much like a closed system that you're not really part of.
So sorry, like, did you mention you're queer or you weren't?
No, straight.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
But I just mean just in a general sort of heterosexual relationship kind of way. So you're sort of 24 years old, convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Call it the Mormon Church just to piss them off.
The moron church.
There you go.
And it's just this sort of after a while you start to think, well, soon there's gonna be some sort of social event, or there's gonna be something that's like, they can't possibly just expect me to be like a sexless mannequin for the rest of my life.
Well, you have the option. You can get married. That's your option.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is there's no like it's very intimate, it's very closed. It's like there isn't anything. There's no like event. There's no like social thing for people.
How old were you again?
They have been young. I was 24.
And you had probably already grown out of being attracted to 17-year-olds. So the normal way you would get married as a 24-year-old Mormon was probably you'd probably moved on past.
Yeah.
Did they not have singles wards out there?
Oh.
I mean, they did, but it wasn't. I just felt like there wasn't any kind of recognition of the fact that you're a person, a human being. It was just this kind of like, I was kind of expected to be. I mean, they put me with the bishop as my home teaching partner.
They love doing shit like that. So I think what you're saying is, as a convert, you felt totally separated out, where like, even in a singles ward, I imagine you didn't feel like you knew enough to be worthy of a relationship with, for example, the Mormon women there who had lived their whole life. You weren't a returned missionary, which puts an automatic, you're a lower value companion on you. Did they try to get you to go on a mission at 24?
No.
Well, that's different than the U.S.
Although I did play in interstate soccer games, and they pretended I was a missionary so they could win.
How long ago was this, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to answer.
2004.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have thought, because it wasn't until about 2010 that they stopped letting like people who had there's somewhere between like 2009 to 2000, probably like 11 or 12. You'll notice, not that I think anybody should be go looking it up and figuring out who was doing this, but you'll notice that they recalled a lot of missionaries, and they weren't entirely clear about what it was. And what it was were missionaries who had confessed to not being virgins and to having any kind of gay relationship. They basically started deciding that they shouldn't send those people on missions. But before that, I guess I am. Maybe it's just a UK versus US thing. Yeah, I would have expected in the US, if you joined at 24, they'd be like, well, you just came in under the bar. Let's get you out on a mission. That's going to cause your most strong conversion. You'll become such a knowledgeable member. You'll come back and there will be a freshly 18-year-old waiting to marry you, even though you're coming back at fucking 26 years old. I'm not a fan of the Mormon structure of how. I'm not a fan of the fact that I had to grow up thinking, when I get, I'll probably go on a mission between 19 and 20 years old, and then when I get back, I'll see who's in their last year of high school, and you just feel gross about that fucking shit. Anyway, Brahm, I think you're right though. Like when you join it and you're a convert, especially if you have some things you're still working on. I remember there was this one guy in our ward in Louisiana. That one day I was the Deacon's Quorum president. And so I walked up and was like, hey, we don't have enough people to pass sacrament. And he was this like new convert. And I was like, do you want to pass sacrament with us? And he said no. And then his friend like jumped in and was the guy who like had converted him. He's like, he's having a problem quitting cigarettes, so he doesn't feel like he's worthy to do it. And I'm like, The fuck? Back then, I would have just been judgmental and been like, oh yeah, you definitely shouldn't pass sacrament then and gone and found someone else. And now I'm just like, what a fucking piece of shit place you even make it for anybody who's a convert.
What it makes me think of is, Brom, what you're describing is probably when you converted, you had your reasons for what you felt and, what you, the reasons for why you wanted to convert and go to the church in the first place. But what is not apparent to most converts is that this cycle of shame and sin and repentance for just being a human being is a feature, not a bug, to the Mormon religion, and that they're very aware of, our human being sexual nature. And by converting you through, let's say, a beautiful spiritual experience, having you maybe read the Book of Mormon, meet with the missionaries, feel a sense of belonging and community, that's the place you need to be, all of those good feelings are going to keep your intuition that everything else about your human nature, about your sexuality, about things that you, as a normal guy at that age, should be kind of allowed to experience with, whatever consensual partner you choose, not having a billion-dollar, trillion-dollar organization looking over it. It's a feature of the religion itself that you feel shameful and that you keep coming back to them when you have these thoughts or when you need to masturbate or feeling bad about yourself for just being a normal human being. And they really try to have you remember your spiritual experiences, remember your testimony, and kind of gaslight yourself into a corner that is just your placement before the Father, that his rules supersede any other human longing. And so it just sucks. It just sucks that they can really pin you down with all of the good parts, all of the things that make somebody want to change their life and convert without realizing that it's going to be a bittersweet pill on the other end of it about what the religion's really all about.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else, Brom, before we let you go? Brom, did we lose you? Are you there? I don't hear you anymore. Well, we'll let Brom go, and hopefully he heard everything that... Yeah, but now it's showing that it's not connected anymore.
I'm getting a pen
either.
and paper because what I said was so life-changing.
That's exactly what happened. I liked Brom, but I got to tell you, Brom, your lullaby is overrated. Just kidding. I don't know. Do you know Brom's lullaby? No. It's like
the famous
most,
one?
It's like the most famous lullaby. Yeah.
And
shitting
the other lullabies now, you angry atheist.
I know.
Everything good and pure.
Da, 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 da. We had another call. I was literally about to pick it up, and then it went away. So we'll just leave it there. We're gonna do super chats now. That's the part of the show that we're at. In a moment, I might step away and let you go on a rant because my dog keeps making a worrying whining noise, and he's not much of a whiner, and I'm worried that he's sick. So I might. Do you can you handle a solid couple minutes? Would you feel abandoned if I was like, hey, I'm gonna step away for a minute because I care about my dog a lot.
I will tell you guys about the most popular TikTok that has been blowing up my TikTok over the last month. That there is, a lot of people don't know about this, but there's this thing called the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. And I went to it. My mom paid a ticket to go see a bunch of really intense, like not fundamentalists in the sense that they're polygamists, but fundamentalists in that they're like fundamentally believe the Bible story. And so Christianity has its like Ken Hams and its, creation museums, and Mormonism has its own version of that. It's called the Firm Foundation, and Rod Meldrum is like the director of it. And he was on Mormon Stories, and that was the day that I quit when he was on. Not because I didn't want him on there, but just because I was like, there's too much bullshit in this space. I just need to get out of it for a second. And I went to this conference and I recorded a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that I learned that they need to believe, that Noah's Ark literally happened, and that there's this video of this guy, I think it's Russ doesn't matter what his name is, but he's literally explaining that you need to pick one. You need to pick either the world's version of science and Darwin and this line of thinking that we came from monkeys and just you can follow the world, or whenever evil is created, God creates its alternate, which was the church, was like came out in the same year that, Darwin's ship sailed or whatever. And that Joseph Smith and the church was established. And if Joseph Smith, it's one of those very domino effects of very boxed in black and white thinking that so many religious people have, that if we know that Joseph Smith is a prophet because the Book of Mormon is true, and that Joseph Smith said, that evolution isn't true, and that Noah's Ark actually happened, and that the earth really was made in 7 days. They have this own version of science that they've created, and they believe that the earth has a core of water and not a core of molten iron and lava. And it's got a good couple. It's also on my YouTube channel as well. If you want to go type in something like "lava is a hoax" is what I titled it. And it just, I have a lot of Mormons on there. It's like, I've never heard of this. I've never believed it. There is a sweet, sweet, gentle, adherence to the actual doctrines, I think Sam Harris says that sometimes, that fundamentalists are actually, in every religion, are the ones who are actually living the pages of their scripture the most full, and it's the more progressive people who cherry pick, who are making space for the fundamentalists who screw everything up to kind of thrive. There is a whole subsection of these guys. They believe every wrong thing that you could possibly think of, and I spend a lot of time making myself angry. Now, I'm a weird ex-Mormon nerd, and I like to go out and listen to things that I highly disagree with and then argue with it on my YouTube channel and do response videos to it. So I just took this whole month off. I've been going on all the platforms for a while. And so I took the month off. But the main thing that people can't wait for me to spill the beans more about is this ultra orthodox, crazy fundamentalist version of new science. How's my rant?
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
How's your dog?
He seems to have some diarrhea, but I think he's good for the moment. I like that when he has diarrhea, he'll tell me, and he'll basically ask to go out. For whatever reason, if he over drinks water, he never even realizes that he's dying to pee. And so you'll be hanging out with him and he'll just start peeing and seemingly not even notice that he's peeing when his bladder's over full. He'll just be like, "Hey, what's up?"
Aww.
And it's just forming a puddle. My dog is he is a half Chihuahua, half Husky. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, he's a wild guy. He's wild.
My brain can't even come up with a picture, but you'll have to send me one later.
Yeah, he's on my Instagram too, but I'll send you one if you like.
Chocolate
I might forget.
rain.
There you go. Take your breath in over there. So we're gonna move on to the super chats. Basically, any super chat of $5 or more. It's how we pay for the show. It's really nice. This show especially. I mean, it's nice coming in on all of the shows, but it helps their production costs. They're getting higher all the time, and it helps basically keep it so we can do channel shows and things like this. This HOSTility being my favorite show, but because it's the shows that do the best are always the ones that people come to expect. So Matt and I do the same show every Sunday, and that's the one that gets 20 times the viewership of any of the other shows. And so we always appreciate it when people support. If you want to do longer support, patreon.com/calltheline. And right now we just launched it. If we get up to 250 patrons before the month is over, I'm shaving my head bald. I'm taking the sides of my beard off, and I'm cosplaying as Matt Dillahunty for a week of shows. I might even gray the beard up. We're going to do shows together, and you'll see young Matt, old Matt. It'll be hilarious.
Will you argue with him like your young self and old self, like a movie?
Yeah, maybe on air too. We already argue all the time, but we might do it on air.
Be like, "Listen, old man, the future is now."
No. See, that's the funny. I think a lot of people, it's come up many times, this idea that I'm going to replace Matt, especially now that Matt and I are basically doing that Sunday show together all the time. Mm-hmm. I can assure everybody I will retire from doing call-in shows and being on YouTube. Years, barring Matt's death, he will do it until he dies. I got 2 more years in me, Max. I'm trying to get behind the camera, not in front anymore. He'll quit. I'll quit long
Jimmy,
before
did
him.
you know that I basically beat all of my heroes throughout my life? So can you please tell Matt, like, don't die before I get to say hi to him, because he's so dope.
I mean, I hope he doesn't die. I fucking like, he's a significant
Does he have
earner.
a claw on his head yet?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, people have tried to kill both of us over the years, I believe. It's not hard to get someone trying to murder you.
That's the problem. We were talking earlier about unmasking your name, and that's the literal, that's the harm of it, is anyone can type in my name and find my address. Like, I used to worry that I'd have a brick come through my window, but it's just, that's what I do for you guys.
And literally the people who feel justified in doxing you, it can be like people who are like, I just hate you, or people who are like, I didn't like some drama you were involved in on the internet and some shit that I believe is my business and don't realize isn't. So I'm going to start telling everybody your legal name, fuckers like that, where you're like, cool, thanks for putting my life in danger, you fucking narcissistic prick. Anyway.
Amen.
I had to move though because of some people looking for me a few years back and getting close. Getting close.
Anyone wants to subscribe to my channel, I have some major fucking tea. I have to, not tea, but like legitimately fucking toxic bullshit that I have to talk about in the ex-Mormon space.
Is it about me? God damn it. It's always about me.
You narcissistic prick. It's not about you, Jimmy.
How is that possible? Everything is. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Anyway, super chats, $5 or more. We'll get you on there, and it'll support the show and make sure that we can bring back more amazing guests. Now that you've done this show, I'm sure we'll invite you to some of the other shows. This is kind of like the first place a lot of people step down into. And then like I do this one show called 'Cause I Wanna now, and it's literally just like, oh, we don't have a show today, but I still wanna. So let's do it. Let's just do one anyway.
I aspire to that. I get so in my head, like I want to be able to create like long videos and live streams, and I have to study exactly what I want to present and talk about for 15 hours the day before, and I'm just like burnt out on an Adderall, and I take on too much.
When I first started Dear Mr. Atheist, it was like a 40-hour week to get the episode out. But my whole thing is like figure out what I'm doing and then figure out how to do it faster, but without a loss in production. And so I went from like 1 episode a week to like literally 5 a week. Like it was nearly daily. Atheist content was the tagline I used to use.
Teach me.
Dude, I will teach you anything. I love doing production stuff. For some reason, I keep doing these production consultations with other people totally for free just because I like them. And of course I will teach you for free because I love you. In a very platonic.
Thank you. I love you back.
I'm very I admire. Just a fan. Can I show you I've been showing this off for the last like week. We've only done 1 episode of 'Cause I Wanna.
This way.
Can I show you the intro to 'Cause I Wanna? Because I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah. Anything you're proud of, I want to see.
The music is just a bop. Is the main thing. But check this out. That's hot. Oh, so good.
I'm smoking it so hot. Congratulations. That was dope.
I like that you were trying to get away with it. You didn't realize your frame is wider now.
I have no idea. What's the meat said?
I don't know. Yeah, Meat sent $10 and said, you're right. I'm sorry. That wives have to submit thing was wild. What are some other things that make people go, what? Really? No way. About Mormonism. You got some examples?
You want us to rant? Oh.
Fuck yeah.
The show just got 7 hours longer. That make you go, what about Mormonism?
Yeah.
No way.
We'll rant, but we'll try and list rant.
Oh, list rant. Did you know that there was a Mormon Stories interview with fudge? I can't remember her name right now. That's gonna drive me crazy. But there's a Black woman who just did a Mormon Stories interview, and it got picked up by like a major newspaper. It was like Newsweek or something. And that was the first time that I feel like a major like media outlet picked up on a Mormon Stories interview talking about how she was literally told not to mix races and marry a white guy because those kids of theirs would be cursed. So you better just marry a black guy and just keep the curse within your own race. So as we know, back in the day, lots of people had different ideas about why people had different colors of skin. And Mormonism just really took that idea by the chokehold and said, doctrine now. And Joseph Smith, he didn't write a whole lot of, proclamations and doctrine through his life, but he did make sure to nail down the curse of Cain, that whole idea about why we're of different colors was definitely because Cain killed Abel and God put a curse on his head. And what was that curse? It wasn't something ambiguous. It was the curse of skin color to separate our races so that we don't intermix. And that was the sign from God. And then you add on to that the Native American people, pretty much anyone who's like of any Native American or like Hispanic, Latino heritage, basically in North and South America, was cursed by God in the Book of Mormon. It's right there, it's just so crazy to me that they hand out the Book of Mormon's like, this is a testament of Jesus Christ, and it's just littered with racism, blatant racism, right? Just like straight up that the white people were the good people and God cursed the people who didn't follow God to have a dark skin to set their seed apart so they'd be loathsome, and unmixable with, and that kind of stuff is carried. Obviously, there's ramifications to that all the way to this day, but there's so much baked in racism into Mormonism, straight up into the doctrine, straight up. You can't deny it. You can't just say that's a cultural thing. Like, it is right there, and it has huge ramifications today for people. But if you don't believe Cain,
if you personally don't believe in Cain's curse, you know what you can do? Ask Cain himself. All you have to do is find Bigfoot. Because in Mormonism,
I love this yes-anding.
Though not the level of doctrine. Thank you. Oh my God. Do you do improv? How are we not better friends?
Yeah. No, I've done everything, but I don't do it like right now.
In Ex-Mormon, you do voices. You apparently improv. Fucking Christ.
I have this joke with my husband, because my husband is kind of an actually guy sometimes. And I'm always telling him to like, will you yes and in a conversation and not actually it?
Yeah.
Just keep it going instead of going, actually, that's not the correct.
One of the tests I put relationships through is whether or not a person will, when I say lie, I don't mean in its traditional sense of like to deceive. But how quickly, for my entertainment, somebody will join me in a lie. As in, we're at a restaurant and somebody's like, oh, what brings you in today? And I just start making up something absurdly insane and just start giving us a new backstory. I've told people, I've introduced like first dates to people as my wife before. And one person, we were on a date and I said that and I was like, I'm going to like this person because while I was making eye contact with the person saying this, I could see out of the corner of my eye, she was moving a ring she had from her middle finger to her ring finger to be able to sell the ruse more. And I had a British accent in this whole thing. And so here's the thing. This is what I always tell people, like when I start a romantic relationship with them. And I mean this with my friends. So I'll extend this to you. I'll never lie to you unless it feels I must to protect somebody and it's something important, or, and I mean like really important, or condition 2, it's really, really funny. But other than those two, I will never lie. And the person I'm protecting will not be myself, by the way, in that scenario. It's to protect somebody else, I might lie.
I think that's a fair rule.
Thank you.
My love language is comedy. And everything always has to come through a filter of comedy, of making somebody laugh, somebody laughing at my jokes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like deep sarcasm, deep, improving on the spot, running with a bit and a joke, adding on to it, the banter. If you can't keep up, it's going to be rough. And when you said that, do you know what Lakai is?
No,
it's like the most expensive restaurant in Utah.
Oh, gotcha. No.
It's like super, super fancy French restaurant. And I went with a bunch of people who were wealthy who took me there. And I felt like I was sitting at a table of very wealthy, powerful people. And when the waiter said, what are you guys here for? And I said completely straight up to the waiter, I was like, world domination. And then they all laughed. And then when he brought out our dessert for the night, we weren't celebrating anything, but when he brought out the dessert for the night, it was a cake and he wrote world domination on it, really fancy.
Oh, that's
and I was like,
nice. That's
high quality service there.
I thought you were going to go on a rant about the way, because I've been in that situation before where rich people take you somewhere and they sort of have this like air about, don't worry, I'll be your guide through this unfamiliar world. It's so unpleasant. I feel
when you're with a bunch of rich people, you know, you have to address the elephant in the room. Like, that's what I was trying to do. I was like, you guys are taking, like, this is a normal, you know, experience kind of for you guys. And I'm just, you guys are with kind of your cronies, your buddies. Let's be honest. You're here to take over the world. And let's see if I can help you in my own way. But
I'd like to see if I can get past the maitre d' at a Ruth Chris in this outfit. Because it says on the door at Ruth Chris, appropriate attire. And I've only ever picked up from Ruth Chris where I've been like, because I don't want to eat. I rarely want to eat in a restaurant. So if I'm with somebody and I'm like, let's have a bit of a fancy date. It's like, let's go get good food and take it somewhere better than in a restaurant. It's not my jam. But I'd like to see if I can get my hoodie with a sports coat attire past these.
Keep the super chats coming in, guys, so he can get that dream.
Thank you.
Steaks are like $80 or something. So
it's something ridiculous. This isn't a normal, for the record, it's not a normal, you know.
I want you eating
Tuesday
at Ruth Chris every day in a hoodie. That's what I want for you.
I would, man, that'd be great. The thing with Ruth Chris is it's a steakhouse, and I'm trying to eat a mammal-free diet now, but I do love steak, so that's tough. Anyway, mammal-free only. Chickens are stupid. They deserve it. They're also assholes. You ever met a chicken? All racist. Anyway, any other big wild things? Moon men?
Oh, that Brigham Young said that there's Quakers who live on the moon. Is that one?
Joseph said the moon. Brigham Young said the sun.
The sun.
Basically, based on the fact that Joseph would say the moon, then the obvious extension would be the sun.
It's like,
goodbye, moon man.
power going to his head. Oh, there's so many things that make people go, what? I think every person who's discovered what goes on in the temple, Mormon or ex-Mormon or non-Mormon, is like, that looks like some culty shit right there. And there's different TV shows that have shown, you know, the rituals that my parents went through, anyone before 1990. If you were believing Mormon your whole life and you're about to go on a mission or go get married in the temple, you have to go through another ritual that's completely different than what you'd see at Sunday school or at Sunday chapels. And you go into one of their big temples and change into a white outfit, and you have a sash, and the women are veiled, and you go watch a big movie about creation, and you do a bunch of handshakes that are supposed to symbolize a bunch of shit that are covenants you're making with God. And the penalties, especially for if you break those covenants, if you don't live up to everything that you promise in that temple. And it's ridiculous things like swearing off loud laughter, or you commit to give all your time, talents, and energy to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or to never speak ill of the Lord's anointed. And so those things really fuck with your head that, like, if I break any of these, and to what degree, how is my salvation now lost? And I think a lot of the trauma from post-Mormons come from trying to live up to these covenants that are so weird and so freaky. But before 1990, this is all kind of stolen straight up from the Freemasons, that, you know, you have to do a symbol, like you have to say that you'll slit your throat like this rather than reveal the tokens and signs and these handshakes and what they mean. And
secret passwords.
The beasts of the sky and mammals will come, if they're not already at Ruth's Chris on Jimmy's plate, that they'll come and eat your entrails out of your bowels because you have to split your chest open. And it comes from this time in Mormonism, just so secretive. And we're of course very much past that. And they're very transparent now. Oh, they're not actually, you still completely are not allowed to talk about any of that stuff outside the temple at all. So it's a whole big shelf item, as we like to say in ex-Mormonism, that a lot of us, you don't really know what Mormonism is. You can have a testimony of it kind of as a teenager, but you don't fucking know what you're actually getting into until you're there. You're not really prepped for what the covenants are, what the ritual is going to be, and that, you know, you have to wear these garments all the time now and go back and do this ceremony over and over and over again for dead people. And it's a whole big, boring, culty part of Mormonism. And you can go look up the videos of what they do in the temple. It makes you go, what? Really? No way.
Yeah, it's wild. Last year I was reading a study, and I think it became popular knowledge because I think it got extended out. But I thank you. I read a study about you don't even really develop the part of your brain which really experiences empathy until you're like in your late teenage years. And these motherfuckers want you to commit with that limitation on your brain to a lifetime of dedication to the church at 8 years old. Like fucking and at 8 years old, you say you get baptized because you know the church is true. And now I'm convinced everybody has the same experience. And you sit with all those men's hands on your head, and they say, receive the Holy Ghost. And then afterwards, you wonder if you're the only one who didn't feel anything change. Felt the same. You know, it's fucking stupid. Also, no green tea. A lot of people have heard no coffee. I think for this thing, no green tea either. Green tea. Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to be really exact in my language with when I'm talking about things. And that's what things that I really want to really let people know. Like, it is, the caffeine thing is, you know, some people drink pop, some people don't. That's more of a cultural thing. But it is fucking on your temple recommend interview. You cannot break the word of wisdom. You cannot drink coffee or green tea or black tea. Yeah. But you could have a Monster Energy drink and
go to the temple. Yeah.
And go to the temple just fine.
Yeah. Or you can pretend kombucha tastes good and go to the temple. So that means you can lie and still go to the temple. That's pretty bad. Kombucha is not alcoholic, right? Or is it?
If I said kombucha, I don't think any of like the church would know what that fucking was, but
kombucha, I'm from Denver. Maybe it's not as big a thing other places. Kombucha's like everywhere there. But I think it was a tea, and it tastes like pickles and belly buttons, I assume.
That's about right.
Yeah, it's fucking disgusting. Also, why does everybody lie about liking beer? It's disgusting. Nobody likes beer. Do you like beer? See, except you don't. Why are you participating in the lie? It tastes like somebody took a banana and took all the sugar out of it and then carbonated it and then peed in the drink a little bit too. It's so gross.
To be honest, the first time I had beer, I loved it. When I was telling you, when I was working at that summer camp when I was 19, and I always heard that it's disgusting and people would hate it. And I don't even like carbonation really, but I loved it because it just tasted like a nice tingly loaf of bread, like a fresh baked loaf of bread. And if it's a good beer, the flavor is good and it's very weedy. Yeah, I could down that all day.
Beer's disgusting. And everybody who says they like it are a part of the same conspiracy.
I don't believe people like it. Like, mixed drinks taste worse to me. Like, you can taste the alcohol in that. It makes me like, bleh.
See, the reason why I liked whiskey I won't tell anyone whiskey tastes good. Whiskey tastes like the stuff you put on your skin before you put on a Band-Aid. However, I grew a very positive association with the specific warmth and tingle and type of effect it would have on my body. And that's why I grew to like, you drink it and you'd be like, oh, that warmth is coming. Whereas even a beer drunk also sucks. And it gives you hangovers. You woke up feeling bloated and fat. I feel like, did you tell people you saw a white and gold dress?
Back during the dress debacle of like 2011 or something?
Yeah. Did you see white and gold?
I saw white and gold, yeah.
Yeah. See, okay. Proof that this is obviously, we all know now that everyone who said white and gold was part of a conspiracy. And apparently it's the same as the beer people. They're all getting together and they're talking about how they're going to gaslight society. And
can we find something we both mutually hate so we can be friends again? Pickles. Keep going with your other hatreds.
I hate pickles. Do you like pickles? Nah, you're a woman. You like pickles.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't eat a pickle, but if I was hungry at a gas station, I wouldn't turn it away.
I hate to appeal to sexist stereotypes, but women for some reason love pickles. I've never met one that didn't, or at least liked it.
Oh, this is what a man feels like, or something. What?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I'm talking about the craving of the flavor of. Yeah, maybe I just feel inadequate next to a pickle. Maybe that's why I hate pickles.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
I hate sushi. What do you hate? It'll be easier for me to find things that I hate so much stuff that it'll be easier for you to start your list.
Were you going on food?
Whatever.
I really still am struggling to like very much alcohol. So I don't hate it, but I don't go for it too much.
I don't drink at all actually anymore.
Yeah, I don't really drink very much either. I had a friend, Matt Easton, who was on a bottle of like Five Husbands vodka. And to support them, he had a big like party for this bottle coming out, and I bought like a whole case of it because my non-Mormon family are like liquor, beer wine distributors, and I was like, this is core to my who I am. I'm gonna go to a distillery, and it feels right to buy a whole case. That's just like in my DNA, you know. But I don't really drink it. And I was like, I'll give it out for gifts. I'll have it for parties for always. That'll be a fun way to support him. My Mormon parents babysit for me the next night, and I haven't moved this giant box of 17 bottles of vodka on the floor. And I come home from Sam Shelley's birthday party, and they're like, sit me down, Kara, we didn't have a serious talk. And in their Mormon minds, Jimmy, you ready for this? Right. They literally told me that they're like, are you going through like a bottle a day? Like that, I would go through like a bottle a decade, you know? I'm like, your Mormon parents will just assume that once you go off the deep end, you go hard off the deep end. I'm like, fucking have a better faith interpretation of me than that. But
maybe ask actually wondering what the answer is instead of these clear shitty expectations you have. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like what a self-soothing narrative you've constructed for yourself, Mom, that is separating us and causing you to hate me more based on completely like made up stereotypes. That's what I hate.
Yeah. Okay, so here's some guidance if you need to find a food. I have like the stereotypical palate of a man with autism because I am a man with autism, and it's literally like I like string cheese and chicken nuggets. Like that's who I am. So I'm sure you can find a food quickly that you hate that I would hate too.
I bell or a raw onion in my life. A bell pepper.
Neither. Fuck
bell
both.
pepper just tastes like poison that somebody pulled out of the grass. It's
disgusting.
I hate them.
There's a little bit of onion flavoring, and it's the smallest amount, usually in beef. I like, but if I crunch an onion, I'll kill you. I'll find you and I'll kill you.
I ask for no onions on my salad, and if there's onions, and then I have to pick them off, and then my fingers freaking smell like armpits the rest of the day.
Yeah.
You're getting a 3-star review because, you know, workers, you guys are trying hard, and it's probably the end of your shift and you're tired, and I'm not going to dog you like that. But fucking hell, onions ruin the flavor of everything.
This is my problem with pickles, where like even taking pickles off of a sandwich, like if you go somewhere and you order a chicken sandwich, no pickles, I can taste if they've realized after to take the pickles off and they left, and then it's like all I can taste. I just can't. I'm just done at that point. I'm like, I was going to enjoy this spicy Popeye sandwich or whatever, and you fucking ruined it.
I'm like that too. You know, when people go to Subway or whatever, and they're just like everything, or Chipotle, and they're like every single thing on there. And I'm a lot more like a child, and I'm like mostly nothing on there, actually.
Oh my God.
Nothing too crunchy and, you know.
What's your Chipotle burrito? Do you want mine? Do you know yours already?
Just, you know, chicken, beef, whatever, some type of meat, the cheese, the sour cream, the lettuce, the salsa has onions in it. I have to live with that, but you know, the pico, I have to power through that. My husband's getting like, when he orders a pizza, it's a supreme pizza. Barf. When he orders it's a like the fajitas one with like the mix of all of the onions and peppers. I would starve to death if that's what I had to eat. So
disgusting.
Even guacamole, guacamole in a burrito it's kind of just tastes like flavorless crap.
It's too much onion in guac. Disgusting. Mine is actually more basic than yours. A meat, usually white or brown rice. I like both. The day to day it'll change depending on which one I want. So it's a meat and a rice. Sometimes I stop there. If I stop there, I'll double the meat up. So, and again, I'm trying to eat mammal free now, but before it would have always been double steak. Cause I love steak. So if I'm talking about my ideal burrito, actually my ideal burrito is probably a full serving of chicken, a full serving of steak, white rice, shredded cheese, the red salsa, and that's it. Not pico. Pico's too much. Yeah. No.
Can't go wrong there.
No. I'm not a fan of chunks of tomatoes.
Wanted some chaos, and they got burrito orders, and they're loving the show.
That's nice to hear. I'm very surprised you're I didn't expect you to try and push the show along. And by the way, if we're coming up on time, feel free to leave anytime you need to.
I'm not. Okay. I just want to make sure the super chatters feel heard. And that, you know, you'll be able to go to Chipotle and Ruth's Chris Anytime you please.
Again,
you're a hardworking man. You deserve it.
I've been to Ruth Chris twice in my whole life, for the record. Actually, Denver had a place that's sort of similar. See, here's where I'm at. This is my whole social life for this week, is usually whatever I do on HOSTility, and then to some degree, like producing and seeing people before and after shows. So we're going to read all the super chats. There's not that many of them. So right now I'm enjoying hanging out in general. And I'm like, fucking, I don't, please send more super chats to make like the show and channel continue and all that stuff. But I'm just having a fun time.
I'm having a fun time too. Now that I've unmasked that I've got back on the vaping train. Don't ever start anyone.
Oh, I already told you. I think about it all the time.
I don't endorse anything I ever do.
They just opened a smoke shop in the town I live in, and I'm thinking about vaping some Delta products because regular weed is illegal here, but the Delta strains aren't. The other strains, rather, because whatever the regular thing is too. But so I've been thinking about, I don't really enjoy weed, but I am sleeping so poorly for the last like several months. I don't know if it's allergies to what the air is like here or what, but I just don't sleep well. And I've been thinking about seeing if I can get put to sleep by some sort of plant solution. And vaping would probably be the way I'd do it. Yeah. I feel like you're holding back.
I'm not holding back. We should talk about drugs more.
Okay. You want to talk about drugs?
Are there any drugs you like or drugs you don't like?
So I had a bit of a problem when I was younger. So I'm now like, the joke I always make is that I'm so straight edge I don't even use condoms, but that I don't use anything anymore, like besides prescribed medications, and even those I could be prescribed sleeping medications, but because of past problems I don't take them. So it's.
I just got sometimes when you get a diagnosis as you go through your life and you're like, oh man, I don't want to be one of those people who's like, I have that thing that everyone, says they have, but fucking hell, that explains a lot. So I got diagnosed with ADHD at the beginning of January. And, they ask you about your childhood and about, your adolescence and stuff. And I'm like, everything has to do with my ADHD, everything, like being very intelligent, being very passionate, but not being very good at school sometimes because you can't focus and kind of only going for the social aspects. And I needed to be more, it's at least if you know that you have kind of a different way of thinking and operating in the world, it makes you, at least, even if you can't treat it, it would have been nice to know, like, you're not a fucking loser. You're not, just because you're not like everybody else and stuff. I would have given me a lot more of that ambition that I told you earlier if I could have at least realized what the problem was and get some help for it. So here I am in my 30s and finally, taking YouTube more seriously and stuff. Like you're saying, like the amount of production that goes into one episode sometimes is so overwhelming. And when you have ADHD, you're just like, fuck, I'll do nothing. I'll just take a nap and I'll just cry that I'm useless,
Forget about it.
So I'm still trying to figure out like my right medications and stuff for this month. And I feel like I've been a stoner for the last 2 years where I probably got high almost every day, I feel like. And then it was when the new year started and I was like, I need to do this as more of a sometimes thing and not just like a crux for my ADHD. Because I love working when I'm a little bit, on a little bit of weed or a lot of it, and work isn't as hard. But I'm like, I need to, and then I can't do everything though. I'm still kind of in this catch-22 of like feeling like for every 2 good things that marijuana does, it holds me back for 5 other ones. And if I have my phone, you ever have your phone when you're high? You're just in the zone and you're just like fucking going to town. So it feels like a lot of most of my TikToks I wrote when I was high or filmed when I was high. And so it's like you're more expressive, you don't hold back, but then at the same time, there's a lot of downsides. So getting a hold of my ADHD and finding some good treatment of what kind of medications I need. That's my big pursuit in life right now. If anyone can relate, trying to figure out what works and what's the healthiest, what gives me the best lease on life.
It is interesting how much more we're talking about ADHD and why there's clearly a huge conversation we need to have about why there's so much of it now, because obviously we somehow did this. Like it's not just that we didn't really talk about it before. Yes, that's true. But you can also say like the percentage of people who have it amongst millennials is definitely higher than amongst boomers, amongst Gen X and the like. And so it's a really interesting conversation we need to have. There's also a number of people who see it everywhere. I get pretty annoyed. I don't care if somebody has, I'm not saying that I'm better than someone who has ADHD at all. But I get annoyed with how many people try to insist I have it. I have autism. I know you can have both. I definitely don't have ADHD. My daily life would be an unmedicated ADHD person's nightmare. And I find great joy in my daily life. And so, it's, there's this weird thing that's happening where we as a society need to go like, hey, we're all way too confident that we know what conditions everybody else has. And we need to shut the fuck up about that. And by the way, people acting in their own interest isn't inherently narcissism. And everyone you hate isn't inherently a narcissist. Fuck off.
Right. I love that you said that too. There's this thing that Sam Shelley and I, that just kind of, she told me that Sam Shelley from Self on the Shelf, if the listeners are not aware, is one of my best friends.
We know
She's
Sam.
also an ex-Mormon content creator. And she's a very, very smart individual. And one of my favorite things that she's taught me is that every dynamic is co-created 50-50. And so sometimes when you're really mad at somebody or a situation, it's really easy to get into this space. Maybe they are narcissists, maybe they're not. But if you look at every dynamic of how you showed up and what you said you're okay with and whatever, and it's just so easy to say, they're a narcissist, I'm the victim. And like, where was I not seeing their best intentions? Where am I playing the victim card? Where am I looking for a self-soothing narrative? Because now I operate in a way where every interaction I have, every friend, every working dynamic, I keep in mind that at the end of the day, if I look back at how somebody treated me and I didn't like it, I have the instinct to call them a narcissist. What accountability have I not taken for myself to show up that dynamic that allowed them to treat me in whatever narcissistic way I'm going to label one day is something that I allowed. And again, It always comes back to like this taking ownership, it's a beautiful thing to be able to take that authenticity, realize your flaws, realize where you show up, where you don't. There's not any kind of new God complex that just because you have the spirit with you, kind of when I was in Mormonism, if something the spirit worked in me to tell me that that's what I need to do, then I'm inherently right then, that's a very narcissistic personality thing. And so coming at things with humility that like, okay, I didn't understand the full story and like the dynamic that now I want to label as so toxic and things, I didn't take ownership for how I didn't show up and how I'm reading the situation. So people are just like narcissism, this and that. Yeah. It takes a lack of ownership out of it. And
why are you gaslighting us right now?
Because it's important to gaslight even in the ex-Mormon space. No.
Gaslight the people you love. Show them you love by gaslighting them. No, that's another one.
It's just a broad brush. I don't like when anything is painted with a broad brush. Nuance Ho fans know that.
Gaslighting is the same thing. I have such an annoyance. And I know that like I used the word earlier in this episode, but it was at least closer, I feel, to what is actually gaslighting. Whereas it's like, it's there's too much of like, hey, I've learned this power word. And the moment I hit this power word, you are now instantly on the defensive by like a bunch. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that you remember something different than me and that you don't think my memory is as accurate as your memory. And even though I'm making the exact same case back to you, I'm now going to use the word gaslighting. And now I've just accused you of abuse. And now you have to prove you're not an abuser. And I just fucking hate this fucking shit that people do. It's like when you're arguing with somebody and you're both really going at it and they're like, well, you just have to be right. It's like, as opposed to you who's arguing for no reason. Like, fucking, you're in this argument too. So you think you won points because you jumped to, you have to be right first. Shut the fuck up and win it on the merits instead of being a piece of shit. Anyway, I hate that one.
More correct things from Jimmy Snow.
Thank you. These are the things that make me off-putting and are the reason why I go to bed so alone. Anyway. Andrea D said, 2 of my favorite Exmo people. Thank you both for all you do. Thank you, Andrea D.
Thank you.
I love that. I love when there's crossover, when people are like, don't get me wrong, I love introducing everybody. That's the whole reason for this show, is to introduce people to people that I doubt that they know, because the line has like a specific group of people. I haven't collabed as much with some people. And so I love being able to be like, hey, here's somebody that I think you should know that maybe you don't. But I also find it exciting when it's like somebody belongs to two obscure communities and they're like, oh, I never was expecting this crossover to happen. Wonderful. I like
It
that.
was beautiful. Last night I was on Mormon Stories. We did a live stream with John Larson and John DeLynn. And in the live stream comment section, people were like, oh, I heard you're going to be on the line tomorrow with Jimmy Snow. And I was like,
Okay.
they're going to a whole other comment section. That's
Fuck
3
yeah.
crossovers in one.
I love that. Usually people show up to say, stay away from that Jimmy Snow. One of my best friends did a show with me in studio here with me, because there's actually a place for it shared another mic. Did a show with me. And this is a person who knows me very well. But there was somebody who doesn't know me at all, but maybe heard some rumors or existed in some comment sections and tries to send one of my best friends, who were like family, a message that just says, you should stay away from Jimmy Snow. He's bad news. And I'm just like, and by the way, my best friend who's here because she runs a charity and we were raising money for her charity, and is literally like, you should cut off that source of income for your charity. Fuck you and your fucking, all these people who are like, you know who knows a creator better than their friends? Me. Fuck you. Get a life. I don't like most people though, so this is a problem. I have lots to complain about and I enjoy complaining.
I'm here for it.
I'm very confused because this is $10 from a margin, which says, here's your because of the 30% YouTube take. I was the one who said that in the first place. Now I get it. Thank you. Kara, and that'll be a good enough spelling for today. Awesome to be.
That is my name, yeah.
Oh, is that the right way to spell it?
It is.
Oh, I had no idea. I thought it was a K.
Well, what are you saying? The way that my name is supposed to be spelled looks incorrect? Like if that's not. I know it's
whack.
not normal. You're fine.
That is fucking whack. That is somebody trying to decide between naming you Caroline or Sarah and being like, well, why don't we have the best of both worlds? Let's throw an H in there. Ridiculous.
It is just the biblical spelling of Sarah with a C. Don't get your panties in a bunch.
I have a friend who's a musician, and there's a million Sarahs. So she's like, well, I'll just spell it CERA instead. And over the time we've known each other, I changed it to XERA in my phone. So I'm the only one who calls her Zira. But, and I say it with a New Zealand accent. Hello, Zira. But yeah, no, I your name's fine. I'm not meaning to.
And you know what?
bully you.
I don't know where we got fucking Jimmy out of James, but here we are.
Right?
So you're one to speak.
I love that people were like, we need a nickname for James because James is too long of a name. So let's take this single syllable name and 5-letter name, and let's shorten it by sticking with 5 letters but adding a syllable. What type of drugs was this person on?
And my name is so weird, but whatever. Anyway.
Oh, I was yes-anding you. I'm sorry.
I know.
You actually, and I yes-anded. So who's the problem?
I am the problem. It's me. And Taylor Swift.
I'm a lot of the problem too. Anabolic Boy sent $5. So that's pretty cool. Anabolic Boy.
And he's shaving his head before you.
I was going to say, I'll be doing something very similar if we hit that 250. I think we're close to 150 now. We've been doing it for like a week and a half, this drive to 250, but it has to be by the end of January, which I think is a week from today. Maybe that sounds right.
Nope.
Yeah. So not much more time. You all want to see me go bald down to a goatee. It's really wild. The main reason why I was like, all right, if there was ever a time to do it, it's now, is because I just got this haircut. And I ended up accidentally going way too short. Like they were like, okay, so what do you think? Like a one on the side?
What do you mean?
This is the thing, is I saw it and it was so different that I was like, oh God, well, maybe I'll just shave bald and start it over. We'll make that a thing. And that's why I was okay doing it. But literally, like, I announced that, and then the following week, it's just hundreds of comments like, Jimmy, this haircut works for you. You look so good now. And I'm like, this is the most compliments I've ever gotten for a haircut. Certainly more than back when no one loved me enough to tell me that long hair was nonsense. How? None of you cared. enough to say, Jimmy, cut the, not you. We weren't really friends back then.
I wasn't around.
But I assume you've seen the old, maybe, have you seen What My Hair Used to Be?
Yeah.
No one loved me enough to tell me like, maybe cut it. Fucking.
You're going an angry at scissors phase where you have to go through that. It's fine.
Someone said I didn't finish this one. A Margin said, Kara, awesome to be introduced to you. Oh yeah, I didn't read the whole thing. And I'll join your channel. It's nice to have someone articulate on the channel. Jimmy, always a pleasure. Do you want to know what someone said at the beginning of the show that I'm worried it could be a compliment, but it could be an insult. And so I don't know whether to pass it along to you.
Do you know I get insulted every day and I'm made of titanium and I love to be insulted and I'm the youngest of 5 kids and it's how I live and breathe. So please tell me.
They said that you match my energy really well. And I don't know which thing that's supposed to be. I agree, but I don't want to say it in case that's a bad thing. You know?
That's not a bad thing.
Oh man. Are you ever just up at 4 a.m. yelling at yourself in your living room? If so, we really match each other's energy.
No. I am on a Zen journey right now just to chill the fuck out. I'm already amped up on, a million other things. My goal is to be less chaotic every single day.
I'm pretty happy lately. I just get in these moods where I decide I need to speak things out. And it's so when I moved here from Denver, in Denver I had like an apartment and then a small house, but then separate had a studio space. And so what I did when I moved here is if I go live out in the country a little bit, as long as there's still internet, I can get I pay less than half of what my house plus studio was in Denver, where I am now. And I have a 5-bedroom house with this, and I'm right now in the loft. And so basically half of the house, more than half, is dedicated to production. My garage is my wood shop. I have an office for that. And then all of upstairs is production stuff. And so to me, it was like, I'm saving a ton of money, but I have all of this space. And sometimes at 4 a.m. when I can't sleep, how empty my house is just starts to crush me. Cause it's just me and my dog. It's literally like, and I'll just like walk around and like, just be like, yeah, this is so, it's funny how the happier you get, the more you'll make yourself miserable. Cause truly, I've been extremely happy lately. And I'm like, God, life's going so good. And I have no one to share it with. What's the point?
Whittle yourself a little Garrett.
Thank you. I thought you said Jared at first. And I was like, also fine. But you and I know Jared. He's so sweet. He's such a sweet guy. Sam's Jared I'm talking about.
Sam's Jared.
Okay. You looked like you weren't on the same page, but I was wrong. You were on the same page.
I knew you weren't going to talk about Subway Jared. That's the only Jared in my life. Yeah,
Oof.
Jared and me are buds.
Oof. That guy. Rick, I don't know where to go from there. $9.99 from Rick. Deconverting by rebuilding a support group, one person at a time, adding Nuance Ho.
Aw.
Hell yeah.
Love you, Rick.
We're more like your support resources in your support group because I can't be added to more groups. I'm too antisocial. Don't give me the pressure of asking me to show up places, please. But we're in there in a way. What about you? Are you a really social person?
I'm a very social person, too social, in fact. I have too many things I have to balance at all times. Part of the reason why I had to kind of shut down production on my YouTube channel a little bit just for this month was I have 3 little kids, and they're 8, 7, and 2. And like, as a mom, I could just be thinking about them and just cleaning the house and just organizing them and just creating structure for them. And that could be my entire life. And trying to balance that with, wanting to go out with Sam and Jared on the weekends and do different projects, fly here and there, and produce a YouTube channel and everything. And I always want to be able to do all of the things at all of the time. And I can never put one down, So they're all important to me.
That's very impressive, though. You do a lot despite having all of that. I am an incredible performer. Let's all be honest. I'm amazing at this. I'm being somewhat facetious, but only a little. I'm pretty good at it. Everything else about me, the funny thing about being a performer who's competent, who's charismatic, who can rant for about whatever, can talk on the phone, and can look into a camera is people expect that energy in real life. It is not my real life at all. I rarely speak above a whisper amongst other people. I'm not kidding. This is performance voice. It's when I'm around friends, sometimes I like to switch in between the two because it's funny and it's off-putting. This has more baritone than my normal voice does. I'm on the air. Dear Mr. Atheist is even a step up above that, where it's welcome back to Dear Mr. Atheist, where we take a blah 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 and we break down.
Flawless.
Yes, in reality, this is about where I speak all of the time. I rarely raise above it, and I'm not very expressive. Whereas I'm throwing my arms around on YouTube and I'm talking.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah,
Man.
We did a meetup last month for local people who are into the line and stuff. And Matt and Arden came, and I basically just glued myself to Arden the whole time and was like, you be the person. But then at some point, like right at the end, there was a moment where there was a physical separation where we were figuring out what we were doing. Matt and Arden were leaving, and I felt more like I was on a stage in front of a bunch of people, and the performance turned on. But sitting at a table, I'm not going to make eye contact. I'm not going to speak much. This is all a ruse, and people expect something totally different. Everybody also expects me to be short. Did you know that?
How tall are you?
How tall do you think I am?
5'11".
I am 6'2".
When I guessed.
I'm 6'2" and 250 pounds. Nobody expects either of those things. And then they meet me in person and they're like, you're a large present person for some reason. When I looked at you and unfortunately I said everyone expects me to be short, which is why you guessed 5'11". If I had not said that, I bet you would have guessed 5'8", because that's what everybody guesses for me. I don't know.
Well, I'm like 5'11", and it's So you look like a man that is not taller than me.
And
that's what I was thinking. I
can see over you. Wow. It's wild.
You can see over the top of my head.
No one expects it. Maybe it's my poor posture. Should I sit more like I got to move my camera around if I'm going to sit up? This is how bad my posture is. This is me actually sitting up, not even like hard up, just naturally up, which means I didn't frame my camera expecting myself to sit up at all during.
You see, I've had straight posture. Does anyone give me credit here? Because this mic is so high, and if I don't have good posture, it's going to be in front of my face. I've literally had my back straight for 2.5 hours.
I'm very well done. I know Tanner was like working on it and I almost started working on it because Tanner was working on his. I think he was wearing something to remind him to have the good posture, and I just don't have. All right, I'm going to try and keep good posture for the rest of the episode. I should do this more. I feel like I look thinner.
In solidarity with me.
And then you got to push the chin toward the nose and chin toward the camera and create separation. Now everybody thinks I have a jawline, when in reality it just goes neck mouth, but you can force it. You can make people think you got something. Anyway, send more super chats. Let's keep going. $5 from Kim Wilson. Do y'all ever get frustrated that the general conception about Mormonism is it's just wacky and harmless? It bothers me how people think that about JWs. Yeah, it is not harmless at all. It is wacky though.
I did sorry, I'm just referencing other things that I've done, but it's always helpful if people are like, I like that topic. Night. I'm going to go look it up because it's great. What?
I'm just doing this from now because you were apologizing for drawing attention to your stuff. That's the whole point of tonight. Tonight's about you. Great. So now I'm just going to keep pointing at you.
No, it's not about me. It's literally, if this was about me, I would have quit by now because.
Oh, that's the wrong direction.
It's opposite for me. There you go. No, because this space is so toxic sometimes, and it's like I like to be a communicator and explain ideas to people and explain them humorously if I can. And I feel like I'm in a good niche where, I'm operating on all cylinders and it's picked up by people. And so, I'm here to stay. But generally speaking, like I know how traumatic my faith crisis was, and any way that I can explain something and people resonate with it just makes me really happy. And whether that's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or whatever, or when I used to work at Mormon Stories as the co-host and the producer, and then now I just go back once a month for these John Larson episodes that are really popular. And we had this really great episode we did a couple months ago called Why Ex-Mormons Are So Angry. And it's one of those, nobody had to research shit. We just had to talk for 3 hours, and it was one of my most favorite episodes. And
no one invited me. I'd have been on that. Oh, would have liked
I know. And there's a rant that I went on that kind of turned into a really popular, I turned it into a TikTok and stuff that has a couple 100,000 views. So what I'm trying to set the scene that this was resonated with a lot of people. And there's this idea, leave the church, leave it alone, because it's just people practicing their religion. Just let people practice their religion, and it's important to them. And that doesn't take into account ramifications. That makes people look through things with a very pinhole view. And I don't think that doesn't lead to the best thriving for you or for your community or your family, to look through a pinhole that if it works for me, and I found my way, and I found, happiness and solace and spiritual connection with a higher power through this, then it's fine that our church has such horrible policies that, harm the mental health, and suicidality is rampant in the LGBTQ community amongst Mormons at like a level of like 6 times or something ridiculous, and it's not just this happy little religion. They can put out all the ensign, it's the church magazine, you can see happy families smiling, but at the end of the day, there's real ramifications to this cult that Joseph Smith started. Some high demand religions, like Mormonism, have more adherents and demand more of their members, and have more of an authoritarian kick than some other religions. And it's important to be able to take into account those distinctions and how they impact the human psyche. And it's not just all happy smiling faces. If you grow up in a household where you have your mom and your dad, and you're going to your activities and you're reading the scriptures, like we were saying earlier, it really depends on what those messages, what are going to be internalized. And for me, I was a very happy Mormon. I loved the church. I did public relations for the church even, and I thought that it was the greatest thing ever. But it was because I was looking through this pinhole view of how it worked for me, and not having a wider sense of empathy for people who were really harmed by it. And that bleeds out where you believe that, one heteronormative relationship is other ones. There's no happiness in that. Where's the happiness in bigotry,
Oh, I thought you meant in heteronormative relationships, and I totally agreed. That's it. Where's the happiness? You can't even slip a finger anywhere.
I'm very happy in my heterosexuality, but yeah, I know what you mean.
It's fucking boring. Anyway. No, of course you are. It was only a joke. It just wasn't a very good one. You had mentioned earlier, like, about how you had that feeling of like ex-Mormons are still a cult or whatever thing. And that's from the church. Like, that's what the church programs us with, where you have this, like, when you leave the church, you're going to be miserable because you're like, this is how miserable people who leave the church. And then they always have this lesson about like, and misery loves company. The ex-Mormons can't shut up about it because they need you to lose your happiness too. They can't be unhappy alone. And no one ever goes like, I remember my dad one time gave me this, he was like, you know what? Even if I found out the church wasn't true, I wouldn't feel like I lost a single thing. I'd still know I was a good person. And I was like, hey, so look, I know you learned to say that in elders quorum. It's super stupid to anybody who's not indoctrinated.
I used to think that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And what you're saying is, even if I find out all of the money I gave to fight against the rights of other people, all of the things I put into to try and mold people's personalities against what their actual nature is, all of this I did to teach other people lies, won't make me a bad person. You're only a good person if the church is true. If the church isn't true, you are a bad person. And I have terrible, terrible news for you. The church isn't true. Like,
yeah. That saying of like, what is unique about the church isn't good. And what's that saying? I'm not getting it right. What's good about the church isn't unique, and what's unique about it isn't good. And so there's this, before I even deconstructed the church and my husband was starting to leave and I was still holding on tight, I can say honestly that I would really think about what I was taught from 3 hours of church, sacrament, Sunday school, and Relief Society. And I remember trying to honestly think, like, would anyone really have a problem with anything that they're teaching in here? And then the answer was no. And now the answer is still a little bit on the no side of just most of the lessons were about, charity and who needs help and who needs a casserole and how to be more honest, and times where you realized that you were acting selfishly and then you came around and you repented. And it was kind of these you kind of get that milk, the milk before meat kind of stuff. You can get that in your everyday lessons, especially if that's what you're looking for. You'll find and you'll pick up what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, yeah, there's nothing in here that's really that objectionable. But here's the nefarious part that I had to realize. It's again, that pinhole view that I am sitting there as a white person. I'm sitting there as like a heterosexual person. I'm sitting there as a person who, I don't like paying my tithing and I am really poor, but am I still going to eat? Like I'm still going to eat, it's all of those things. I still am sitting in a place of privilege after all. And it's not until you realize that that's the milk before meat is actually quite a nefarious thing that it's kind of when we were talking about with the gentleman from England, that they sucker you in. And I do mean sucker in both meanings of the word there, that you think that you are in this place with these other wonderful people, and there's this communal aspect of you're just a human being. Human beings want to be communal. They want to make you a casserole. They want to get together and do activities. And that can be the general aspect, the general view that you kind of have of Mormonism. And you have this conversion, a communal conversion that people understate, that you're having a conversion to the community. But then once you get that conversion, what goes along with it? You're swallowing these people, these prophets, you're superseding their authority over your own better knowledge and intuition and empathy for people who are on the margins, right? And so you're willing to put up with so many things, all because this is where the community is, this is where I feel good. But are you still donating your money to causes? Are you still sustaining the leaders who they shouldn't be sustained for the ways that they've harmed children, that they've harmed various people on the margins? They shouldn't be sustained, but you'll sustain them because you're like, this is where I feel good. This is where my safe space is. And it's nefarious to me.
There's nefarious is the right word, because there's also a nefarious side to even like the things that you think are just objectionably, usually you think are just objectively good. Like when you bring up the charity thing, first of all, Mormonism, like in most places, you're only taught that like the only valid form of charity is tithing and fast offerings. Anything beyond that, like giving charity to Doctors Without Borders, you should just give that money to the church. They'll do better with it than Doctors Without Borders.
You can write it on your tithing slip that you want it to go through the church's, their charitable organizations.
Right.
They're the trustworthy ones.
But then it also reminds me of like, so people, for example, when they try to talk about how obvious the Bible is so good, for example, just Christians in general, they'll talk about like, well, the 10 Commandments, do you disagree? Thou shalt not kill. That's a pretty good one. And the funny thing is when you actually go back and you look at it with the context of history and what they're talking about, and also then what happens and follows, it's very similar to Mormonism, because thou shalt not kill does not end with the word humans. If there's an implicit ending, it just ends with the word Jews. It's thou shalt not kill other Jews, basically. It actually doesn't apply en masse. And that's literally Mormonism. Be charitable to Mormonism. Take care of people who are Mormon. Even like when you think about like Mormon missionaries who are instructed to do service projects wherever they can, like they can ask like, hey, thank you for, I'm sorry you don't want to hear our message. Are there any chores we can do for you? Because they see that as their second opportunity. Like, oh, look at us. We're doing this chore even though you didn't agree to talk to us. So now you're going to think, well, they did it even though they didn't get it. Maybe I should hear them out. It's manipulative. Mm-hmm. It's literally like manipulative from the ground up. And it's, they even do fucking weird shit like, hey, let's take our most attractive missionaries and put them in like the college zones, for example.
Right.
Every step of the way where you're like, oh, this thing is nice. They did this service project. It benefits the church in some way. And I'm not just saying like it happens to, like, cause you could say that's true of all charity. Like if you do charity and somebody notices, something nice is likely to come your way in some regard, even if it's a sense of whatever. You can say there's always selfish motivations, but this is like their primary motivation. It's part of the programming. It's part of what makes them where people go like, oh, we don't care that if you actually look into their secret money, Mormonism may be the richest religious entity and perhaps entity on the planet, which is crazy with only 4 to 5 million active members and all the fucking crazy shit that has caused that to happen. And yet they're still asking poor people to pay their tithing before their bills. We don't care about any of that. Look how sweet they are. And they're always the smiles on their faces that aren't a part of their programming to project something that isn't true. I love when I talk to people who knew my family who were like, you guys were like the Mormon family. Your dad was the bishop and everybody envied you so much. I was like, my dad was threatening to fight us almost weekly. We'd get home from church and be like, we're going to take this outside. Nobody expected that shit. Like it's all a fucking show and it's all manipulative. And yes, I'm very, to the original question, the perception of harmlessness amongst Mormonism is just a position of a tremendous ignorance.
Shall I rant some more? Because I can take it up a notch.
Let's do it.
So another really good Mormon Stories episode with John Larson is about amicus briefs that he makes the great point in that podcast that if you want to know what a church stands for, look at what their lawyers are advocating for. And you will get fucking chills down your spine. So this episode, John Larson goes through on Mormon Stories, you can look it up, all of the various amicus briefs, which if you don't know means friend of the court. So if you have, if there's a lawsuit going on and you have an interest in the case, you can say that this affects me directly, like a religious organization around gay marriage topics, right? And try to make your case that you should be able to be heard and have a sway for the evidence, right? So throughout its history, the LDS Church's lawyers will tell you what they believe in, what they're actually about. And so where do you put your money? Where do you put your lawyers? Is it for protecting children or is it for protecting yourselves? And there's just a list of all of the filings of the LDS Church for these amicus briefs on, there was a Jewish rabbi that sexually assaulted, pretty horrifically, a teenage girl. And it was in the church's best interest to side on this, to say that churches are not held responsible whatsoever for their clergymen in any regard, hiding, covering up, sexually assaulting their congregants, right? And that's really spooky. That's really scary. Yeah. Obviously things with gay marriage, so time and time again, it's unfortunate that religion takes that human instinct for connection, belonging, wonderment about the afterlife, and they take that beauty and that awe and they boil it down into where you are okay with that church spending your tithing dollars now in supporting some of the most horrific things that only give them more power and take yours away. And the other thing I was going to say, again, if you really want to know the facade that the church is up to, I always like to tell the story that when I lived in LA, my husband and I are comedians. We moved out there, and I love LA Mormons are of a different breed, and I had a great time there. But I got asked to be on a public affairs council. So for my entire stake out there in LA, I was doing some public affairs, not being paid in kind of the public relations department of the church. And I thought it was great, make Mormons look cool, get out the message, and you help connect your people in the stake to different opinion leaders to spread that Mormons are cool and that we're awesome and we're here to serve. And I started getting more and more sick to my stomach when we were doing these charity projects. And you get, again, they siphon that beauty for connection and for helping people, and they use it for their own nefarious gain to make their organization more popular and more palatable. And like the other person said, it just looks happy and it doesn't look so wacky. They're trying to mainstream it. But we would do these charity drives and a lot of really great stuff that we did that we were proud of. And I'm there to take pictures of it. I'm there to write articles for it and just talk about how awesome Mormons are. And it just feels really weird in a very big contradiction. One of the best things that Jesus said was if you pray in public, then you already have your reward. And I was like, this is a direct contradiction that we're taking pictures of people in the helping, the yellow vest that say I'm a Mormon all over it, and then blasting that and putting that in the newspaper so people know about your good works. And I was like, that's literally what Jesus Christ told us not to do. But if it's in the service of the organization and building up your organization and hopefully getting more members, you'll do it. And one of the things that made my stomach turn the most was there's a parking garage that needed to be built for one of the buildings in Mar Vista. And after Prop 8, the church really fucked themselves because like, liberal Californians, they know what the church was about, and they absolutely were trying to take away the rights of gay people to get married in a state, with everything that they did during Prop 8, phone banks and sending people out on buses and spending money to try to, put their religion at the center point of politics and people's rights, right? So people were still really angry about Prop 8, and they said that one of our explicit goals as the public relations department was to mend broken relationships with the community after Prop 8. And it's just, hey, it's like, I'm just a member here where I'm just trying to do my best. I want to serve this church. I think it's true. And you're telling me that now I have to my responsibility is to put Band-Aids on the gashing wounds that you guys let open, like, I guess, so we needed the zoning department didn't like Mormons, like they had several votes on if we could build this building, and they said no. And we tried everything that we could to integrate ourselves, that we're cool, happy, and we just want to be in this community. And so we held an honorary night there's this gay city councilman who did a lot of great work in the community. And so we held a night honoring him and all of his work at the Stake Center. And he had a plaque, we had a ceremony, and he was retiring, and we had a whole big honorary thing. But Jimmy, I'm fucking serious. It was all a facade at the end of the day to sow a little seed that, hey, we'll take away your right to get married. But is it okay if we give you a plaque? Like, here's our fucking plaque. Do you guys like us yet? Can we have our parking garage?
What we would like you to do is, so check out this plaque will go very well in your home where your marriage certificate currently is, which we'd like to take from you. We actually made sure the dimensions are the same. It's actually the same as your current marriage certificate. You just take that down, put this up, woo, woo, we're on.
Exactly. It just feels wrong.
Yeah, Mormons will even manipulate each other this way. Like the way that I can remember being in like home teaching meetings with Bishop Rick and stuff. And it's like, all right, so here's these people. They're not coming to church very often. They're not contributing, blah, 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 blah. Here's the things we know, so-and-so thinks they saw so-and-so with a beer. How do we call them out? How do we stop by? How do we guilt them into realizing their life is in shambles and we've got the solutions? And what do we do temporarily that makes their life easier so we can make them dedicate their life to us and give us more value in return over the long run of everything. Like it's literally like, it's so gross. It's normalizing things that are abusive. It's normalizing, just crazy, weird shit. And unfortunately it was a system I was a part of. And to tell you the truth, I was pretty good at it. Not as good as, Goebbels over here, but,
I know I use all my public relations for this side now.
Was Goebbels the one who was in charge of propaganda? Sounds
about right.
Yeah. Somebody was. I don't know. Anyway,
or internment camps or something. One of those.
I just wanted to compare the church to Hitler because it's, I'm a YouTuber. I have to compare everything to Hitler at some point.
Get your bingo cards out, guys.
That's right. Jimmy compared to. But now I actually, on the other side of it, feel bad because I did also kind of call you Goebbels and all of that. I was like, you don't deserve that.
It's all systems, not people. When you're talking about, it being very manipulative, to me, it's all a big system where people think that this is the one place they're told from childhood or in a very maybe like traumatic area of their life or confusing or whatever the reason is that they think that this is the one sole arbiter of truth, enlightenment, knowledge. And some people, they need that. Their brains are at this developmental point where even adults, where that's what they think they need. And they need that black and white thinking to be really solid in something for once in their life. And any convert to the Mormon church that's now deconverted will tell you, like, I converted because it was a coping mechanism for this other thing I wasn't addressing, Right. And it's like, we're messy, complicated people. Yeah, we're messy, complicated people, and we think that this is the one place that we'll get the spiritual fulfillment from. And if somebody is going astray, you'll be used by the system to tell people, like, where will you go? What will you do? Because that's the only way that you find solace. But people move on. People have better, more fulfilling lives outside of the church just because you can't see it right now. And people are messy. It's not going to look the way you're gonna probably filter things through lots of layers of sin, thinking that what they're doing will never be true happiness. That's usually like the go-to standard. But for people, anyone who is going through that, you just have to remember that people are products of their genetics, their conditioning, and my parents, like I said, are converts, and the reasons why they're so stalwart in the church has to do with a lifetime of a shitty childhood, and they needed a safe place to go, and so they look at their kids who have left the church. And I have a different experience with than my parents. I have a different conditioning that has led me out, and it doesn't mean I'm necessarily better than them. It just is it's like a no free will thing to me, that I just happen to be a type of person who values knowledge and empathy and truth, because I don't need to stick so strongly to dogma for my brain to survive. I'm able to knock down those pillars and rebuild.
I don't give my parents many passes though in that, like, I know a lot of people do, but I'm sitting at like, and I don't blame anybody else who does, but I know. So one of the big differences is we had the internet and they didn't. When we had a question, there was no question we couldn't ask, and we were able to start asking those questions in periods of our life where our sunk cost wasn't so much that it was insurmountable to do. And so, like, if I give them a pass anywhere, it's that. But then I'm sitting here going, like, at its core, if we're going to say one issue is what sets me off to eventually realizing the church isn't true, it was their treatment of queer people. And it's like, that's very common for a lot of people, though I was on my journey to prove it true, because this is such a big thing we need to push back on. So I'm going to prove the church is true. And then it's just unfortunate that queer people don't get married, but it's still, the church is true, and that's what's matter first. We'll all understand. So I'm on my journey to prove it true. I find out it's wrong. And my thing was, I couldn't get past the treatment of queer people. My parents somehow got past the treatment of black people. And that's where I'm like, nah, I'm not giving you a pass. Yeah, I get it. You didn't have the internet, and I'm going to try and be empathetic. But you, like, not only did you see the racism happening, but this is also from the generation that, like, my dad told me the story 100 times where he was when JFK died, despite the fact that he would have been like 6 or something like that. And yet never heard the story once of where he was when MLK died, where you're like, weird, that happened much later. You would have been an adult. This would have been but I don't have the story about you walking in and comforting your mother as she was crying because JFK, like, it's weird. It's weird how that giant thing, you remember. And so it's like you lived through and stood by the church. Not only that, you've now gotten to the point where the church will pretty much admit, as close to admitting as they'll ever do, that the reason why black people weren't allowed to fully participate is that the previous prophets were racist. Like they're pretty close to just outright saying it.
They get things wrong sometimes.
Right, exactly.
Like being racist.
Right, exactly.
That's just a wrong thing that they did. It's not indicative of their lack of authority from God.
And so I'm sitting here going, like, you can't now go through all of your life experiences, all the times that God was like, look, I know it's tough, but this was wrong. That's what you thought God was saying. That I know it's tough, but this is the right way, and it'll all make sense after, and blah 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 blah. But also, I'm sitting here going, like, I don't even know that my parents would have thought it was wrong in the moment. And God, I hope this changes at some point, because I literally, like, I remember my mom talking about interracial marriage in the 90s, and it wasn't great. And we had this person that we'd gone to church in Tennessee with, who had gotten married to a black man. And she's telling the story of this man basically being murdered while they're on a trip to Africa. But it wasn't anything. It was like a random act of violence. And yet she's telling the story in a way that's like, well, what did Karen expect when she married him? Like, fucking, anyway. So I think what summarizes so far this whole episode, we'll get back to super chats here in a second, but I know you're all going to be surprised. Kara and I just don't think the Mormon church is a very good church. It's a pretty bad church.
To summarize, false thing.
Yes.
Ramifications abound.
Pretty bad church is, I think, the summary. Just those three words.
Church.
Pretty bad. Pretty
bad church.
Pretty bad church.
Pretty bad church.
Eric Nelson says, did you guys do Passover? We were Protestant, but frequently did Jewish cultural things. We had a menorah and dreidels around Xmas for some reason. Mormons only appropriate Jewish history. They don't appropriate Jewish holidays so much. As far as I know, I didn't ever do anything like that.
That's perfect explanation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mormonism. This is funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Can you name a sort of like cliche bigotry that Mormonism doesn't engage in? Because I used to say anti-Semitism, and then I realized the Book of Mormon by itself, when you really think about it, is about one of the most anti-Semitic things anybody's ever come up with. But can you think of like, what's like a traditional, obviously, queer bigotry, trans bigotry, racial bigotry? What don't they do? Like, I
know. And two things on that. When you were gone for a second checking on your dog, I was telling everyone about this ultra fundamentalist orthodox kind of version of Mormonism that is actually just Mormonism with more explanation. Basically, Rod Meldrum and the Firm Foundation, the Book of Evidence Conference, and Rod Meldrum created his own Book of Mormon that my parents gave me. I have a copy of it. And when Rod Meldrum, this guy, when he was on Mormon Stories and we were talking to him about all those kooky ideas, I brought the book out, and it is the most insane. Because for Mormonism to make sense, you have to appropriate the fuck out of Judaism. Yeah. You have to appropriate the fuck out of it. And so he has parts of this book where, like, you know, we know that Native Americans now, we have certain tribes, or we have photographs that they had their hair. This literally in his book. This is like a point that he thinks is a slam dunk point. And I pointed it out on this Mormon Stories episode of them, where it's like, you know, there are certain Native Americans who will have their hair in a little like circle right here on their forehead. And that is evidence of that thing that I can't remember, that they keep the boxes on their forehead, that they remember their little writings. Do you know what I'm talking about in Judaism?
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, holy shit.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It's that little box that they'll keep on their forehead. And the Native Americans in the Book of Mormon times were still practicing these Jewish customs. That's full-blown false, first of all. You would see the Book of Mormon is supposedly translated from Reformed Egyptian. What are these Jews who are leaving Jerusalem doing knowing Reformed Egyptian, which doesn't even make sense to even know Egyptian, let alone Reformed Egyptian, that we don't have any evidence that even makes sense. But then there would be some type of evidence of that in the Native American culture today. Languages, they would evolve over time. Zero evidence of any of those things. And then furthermore, there's the appropriation of just Native Americans are part of us. Like, it's just this white man's fan fiction that Joseph Smith made up. Yeah. What are all these Native American people here doing? They used to have been white, because they must have built these cities, these towns, and God must have just like putting this narrative that's very self-serving, you know, bigoted, white supremacist narrative that was common amongst people in the day, and just utilizing it that God did this to their skin. Like every single thing from where we came from, who came from where, Mormonism will take it and run with their narrative.
Mormons hide behind too this idea, like they clearly they live in ignorance. They need to claim they avoid certain things. Because, for example, when you bring up like the DNA stuff with indigenous populations and stuff, and they're like, well, but we're still gonna find out. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's not that it's unsolved where indigenous people came from. Right. It's that it's solved. We know where they came from. We know what their migration patterns were. We know what their cultural heritage were. It's not that we're saying nothing yet indicates that Native Americans are ancient Jews. It's that we now know they aren't. Exclusively, they can't be. We know where they came from, and we know it wasn't Jerusalem, you fucking idiots. And so then you get people like my dad who are like, well, maybe the people in the Book of Mormon are just different people that were on the continent, and we'll find them totally separate. And maybe the whole civilization's extinct, or we haven't found the right people to DNA test. And you're like, you're a fucking idiot. Because you not only do you not know a thing about anthropology, a thing about science, a thing about history, a thing about any of that stuff that, granted, you have to go seek out to find. It's not just going to come in front of you in school. Anthropology is taught very little. It's a part of other courses, but very little. History of the United States is the entire extent of what you're going to learn about the American continent when you go to school here. Like, you have to seek out those things. But not only do you not know that, you don't know your church, because Joseph Smith is the one who said that it's not a different people, that it is the Native Americans who are the ancient Jews. And
That's
the number,
it's the craziest cognitive dissonance that they're like, there's a separate Hill Cumorah, actually. You know?
right.
You know,
or it's a teleportation spell, basically.
Yeah.
The most racist thing I probably ever heard, the most thing that's like racist and anti-Semitic and everything, was somebody in church making the case. I'm not going to actually describe the case. This isn't I've actually heard more racist things than this. I don't know why I said the most racist. This is just very racist. Invoking a proof of the relationship between Jews and Native Americans, entirely dependent upon his anatomic observation of what he claims to be similarities in their noses. So that was a whole thing, that the bishop didn't get up and tell him to sit down and shut his racist ass up. Like my dad, when he was bishop, would get up and stop people in their testimonies if they were saying the wrong things and be like, you need to go sit down and think about this. It'd be like, one time it was like a person saying that the ward needs to call the ward to repentance because of something. Other times it'd be like somebody saying like, he wouldn't tell them to go sit down, but he'd go add on at the end of their testimony and make them stand next to him while he would. Someone was talking about like how lucky he was because he and his wife grew up in the church together, but then they sort of strayed away together and started having sex and left the church. But then they came back and was talking about how lucky he was and how great and how blessing it was that he was welcome back. And he like didn't let the guy go sit down. He's like, stay up here for a second, stay up. For the record, for anybody who's listening, you should not count on that experience. When he says he's lucky, he really, and basically like tries to make sure that this guy's nodding along that like, if you're a youth right now, do not take this as a story of if you leave this way, you'll return. Because this isn't usually what happens. Like that sort of like, but the person coming up basically saying like, Jew nose, Native American noses, well, they're the same, aren't they? That person isn't told to go sit their fucking face down. And there's tons of stories like that where I'm like, if I could go back with my current mind, I'd be like, there was one guy who started in Wyoming, of all places, starts telling stories of like true courage and spirit of his Confederate great-grandfather or grandfather. And he's like, I know it's the Confederacy. And my dad after the fact was like, we're talking off to the side and he's like, if your grandpa had been here, he'd have taken that cane and shoved it up his butt or something like that. Like my dad really didn't like it. And I remember thinking that was like a proof of like, well, my dad's at least somewhat reasonable. And then I remembered like, but you didn't fucking say anything. The bishop didn't. He wasn't the bishop of this ward, but I was like, the bishop didn't. You didn't stand up and say, why didn't you? Why is there this thing of whoever's giving a talk just gets to say whatever racist bullshit they want or defend the Confederacy? And if I could go back, I'd stand up and be like, hey, are we doing this? Are we chilling with this fucking Nazi you like right now? Like this guy talking about the bravery of how we should be so impressed by his slavery defending grandfather? The fuck are we doing here? Like it's fucking gross. It's just gross. And then a person in Louisiana literally giving a big long speech where he was sort of that preacher type. He'd pound on the pulpit and stuff and like, and blah, blah, blah. And then he just goes off way too long about how everyone will become white and delightsome. And this is serious? Louisiana. We actually have black people in our ward. I know that's not common in a lot of Mormon wards, but we had them. And he's just going way, way too long to where at a certain point you're like, I don't think he means a metaphorical white. This is white skin. He's saying white skin right now. It's all
you have good stories. I grew up in a much kinder ward than that. I got the good Mormonism if there is one.
If one can find such a thing. Yeah.
If one could possibly.
The relatively good Mormonism, I feel like is the good one. All right, let's start. People are starting to say they're going to bed and stuff. Let's get through these super chats and we'll try and be a little more prompt. Though literally I could go all night. I really could.
Me too.
Having too much fun. Yeah. So super chats of $5 or more, you can still send them in. We're not going on any more 20-minute rants per super chat, but we will answer them. But we're going to be more. Yeah. The super chats that I'm currently about to put up are more than an hour old. Let's see. Eric Nelson said, we already did that one. So no, I didn't do any Jewish. I remember us doing like events at church where they'd try and make things look like an Israeli bazaar or something like that. Did you ever do that? Yeah. That sort of shit. Yeah. Just appropriation, but no real Passover.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nitsa Trap says, I'm a woman and I hate pickles. Thank you. I'm glad that there are some of you out there. It's a texture-based hatred more than anything. I don't love the texture, but it is the flavor for me that kills me, which I like vinegar, so it's not just vinegar. The Ratsmith says, have you seen the Godmakers animated film about Mormonism? And if you have, how accurate is it to the Mormon religion? Have you seen it?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I'd have to watch it fresh to think what is accurate, what's inaccurate. And I think everything that they say in there could absolutely be supported by, Mormon doctrine, various general authorities, and at least the way that the church ran in the 80s, because it's a pretty old movie. I know one of the big claims in there is about that Elohim had literal sex with Mary to produce Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ went on to have several wives. And I don't know if you could find that in like something canonized in Mormonism, but I think that's more just kind of a kooky idea that various, 20th century people were bouncing around. And it's not something, a lot of the claims I think overall are not, you're not going to get into stereotypical, everyone's going to be on the same page and say, we all believe this and sustain everything, that their kind of claims are. But it definitely goes hard, but yeah.
Yeah, so basically every claim that you see in there, almost every claim, you can probably trace back to an apostle, but it doesn't mean that Mormons will recognize it. And a lot of those apostles are going to be like, it's going to be like Brigham and Parley and those people, especially Brigham. I'm trying to remember who used to do it with, but I was just talking to Bryce about this, but like they would basically do debates, and that's where a lot of the crazier shit would come out, like the Sun Quakers.
If people don't know, Mormonism started with Joseph. Like, if the way that Joseph Smith started Mormonism was such a trying to be a more not just a restoration, which is more the word they'd call it today, but a real spin and Bible fan fiction addition to Christianity as it was. With Joseph, I think just really trying to utilize his treasure digging past for a new kind of career, for a new book, without really calling himself a prophet at first, and just thinking of himself as an author and a translator. And then the more power he accrued, and the fact that the Book of Mormon wasn't able to be sold by copyright, because that's kind of weird. I think people should know that. If God really called Joseph Smith at 14 years old in a grove of trees to say, this is the true church, that feels like a real big add-on, a real shoehorn after the fact kind of story that they started to tell later on that made more sense, because you don't really tell a prophet to go dig up this ancient text of scripture and then sell it to a Canadian publisher and lose the copywriting privileges for it, which is what Joseph Smith was trying to do before they turned it down, because it's such a boring book. Mark Twain called it chloroform in print, and he was correct to do so. So if you think about Mormonism as just this guy trying to utilize these racist ideas and trying to create this Bible fan fiction of this new way of interpreting where these brown-skinned Native American people came from, and adding on his own quirks and his own ideas while throwing the word of wisdom, because the temperance movement is so big. There's just it's a big remix of all of those things that were going on in Joseph Smith's time. And then as more time goes on and a religion becomes powerful enough, it just becomes more corporatized, and it needs to kind of buckle down into more of a franchise model, right? And so through the 20th century, there were a lot of intellectuals and things at BYU, and a lot of fights that went on up until the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, where more of the Bruce R. McConkie, more of the more buckled down conservative fundamentalist versions of Mormonism took over, and all of the other ideas about personal revelation and kind of a little bit more of a liberal philosophy on religion up till that point kind of got booted to the curb for the Mormonism that you see right now. Yeah. So that'd be my explanation.
Yeah, there was a surge of almost progressivism. George Albert Smith, as president, met with a gay couple and was like, okay, explain to me what you're doing. And they were like, we love each other. And he's like, all right, do your best. Have fun. Mm-hmm. And basically was like, yeah, all right, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, women had the priesthood in Joseph Smith's day. And there were a couple of people, black people, that had the priesthood.
Fluctuates.
Brigham Young and what?
Yeah, it fluctuates. Brigham Young is it's funny because when we talk about the church, we most often focus on pedophile Joseph. Brigham Young is worse than Joseph by a lot.
Brigham Young's way worse than Joseph. Yeah.
Brigham Young is a Hitler character. Like and I don't
really
mean that.
is.
I don't mean that like metaphorically. I mean, this was a guy gunning for murdering and genociding people.
Literally,
he didn't like. Like this is a horrible human.
And the kind of apologetics / spin on that, which is kind of true in a way, is that Joseph Smith was kind of the curator that brought together these. He was the idea man, and then once he was killed, for the saints to be able to survive, they needed somebody who ruled with an iron fist, for better or for worse, to be able to take the saints out west. And he's governor for 40 years or something ridiculous, while he's the same time as prophet, just a total authoritarian cult in the Rocky Mountains. And that's why Utah is so successful, to be honest. You needed a guy who was going to go murder down Native Americans, who was going to get people on boats to come out being completely lied to and basically sex trafficked and all those different ways of trafficking people across the plains to be able to build up the city. And he was a real Hitler type character.
Yeah, and it's almost one of those things where you're like, the church Joseph started and intended, despite the fact that he would probably be thrilled at how much power it did eventually grow, did manage to obtain, isn't the church he intended to have, like he did not intend for Brigham Young to be who followed him. He very much intended for his son too. Like the RLDS is actually the Joseph Smith's vision, at least continuing on. And Brigham Young's just like, you know what? I hate consent of many types. Let's just blow right past that. Autonomy? Nah, fuck it. Anyway, Ryan Warner says IPA and different breweries take on it. Oh, this was sent back when we were talking about beer. IPA and all the different breweries take on it are truly delicious. I learned that drinking neutralizes my psych meds. That's a bummer. I think I know what you have though, because you send that, but I won't speculate. I Got Cookie says, I stopped vaping with nicotine toothpicks. It works. Yeah. Only a few more. So what's that?
I would pick that up right now.
You'd be like,
good tip, Cookies.
Just start poking them into your gums, making little bleed spots and then rubbing it on it.
It really is like an oral fixation. I don't even like it. It's just stupid.
Yeah. I just like candy. I'll just suck on candy then. Just destroy my teeth with some dum-dums. I am addicted to candy. That's true. Sugar in general. Larry Fishman says, so is she saying it was partially my fault that most of my grade school peers teased and harassed me for most of our time together, which left me with social phobias that have prevented me from living a normal life? I don't know what this is in response to. Who is she, first of all?
Probably me.
No, why would somebody pay $20 to accuse you of something? And sort of... That's a big thing. So is she saying it was partially my fault that most of my grade school peers teased and harassed me?
I think they're referring to when I was talking about when dynamics are co-created, and that goes that you have to have a certain level of authority over your own life and your own situation to know what rights you're entitled to and be able to be in a situation to move out of that. So I don't say that without tons of empathy and understanding that people can only do the best with the dynamics that they are in. I think that's what he's referring to, that when you're a child, you can't really choose the dynamics in which you have to participate in. But as an adult who tries to strive for, I would say, feeling my feelings, not pushing them down, and not waiting for them to just explode one day, that I want to be in a space where I feel my feelings and I show up authentically in my relationships, and I make sure that if I don't like the way that I'm being treated, that I stand up for myself and don't try to just go along with things that I'm later going to wish that I would have spoken up earlier on.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the things where it's like, no one's going to say it's your fault. Like, as far as the phrase, my fault, teased and harassed. Well, you're describing other people choosing to do things that are wrong, and nobody here is going to victim blame anybody for that. When you then get into these other things, like social phobias, there's an element of like, yes, we understand that that's where it comes from. nobody can, there's no way to force you past that if you're not deciding to get past it. And I'm not saying you just wake up one day and decide to get past something, but I deal with autism, I deal with social anxiety, I deal with all kinds of things. And in the times that I didn't want to get better, I didn't get better. And it's one of those sad things where it's like these assholes who are constantly victim blaming and sort of talking about picking yourself up by your bootstraps and all that shit, basically give that whole line of thinking this emotionless, totally lack of empathy melody to it all, because that's where they are coming from. And they are just sort of like, I'm privileged and don't understand. If I felt bad, I just decide to stop feeling bad. And you're like, okay, fuck off. Great that you can do that. But we do also still have to sit there and go, one of the hardest things to deal with in life are people who are sick, who you can't convince to seek treatment, for example. And so there is still going to be a level of, in anything, you still have personal responsibility over your person and what something does to you. But it doesn't mean that it's easy to choose or easy to change. A lot of stuff is a lot of hard fucking work. So when you're acknowledging, it's kind of like when we talk about, like, if somebody gets assaulted and somebody says, well, what were you wearing? That fucking person is a giant piece of garbage. But a person isn't a giant piece of garbage if you are a person they care about and they are a person who's responsible for your security, and you're about to go to a almost completely men's only MAGA Republican bar topless, and they go, that's a stupid idea. That person's not an asshole for preempting the dangerous situation that you're putting yourself into. The person who then attacks you for being topless at that bar and saying you deserve the assault is the asshole. These are different concepts.
Yeah. And I'm mostly talking about interpersonal relationships. And we were talking about our parents and things. And I talk a lot about how difficult my parents are. And if you look at things and you laugh things off, and I just don't internalize my parents' judgments of me pretty much at all. And that's a dynamic that I choose to make sure that I bring into our conversations, that I refuse to let them have power over me, because I know who I am. I know what I'm doing is right, and that they are from a false religion and they're conditioned to say these things. They love me very much, but this is the way that they engage in it. And so I'm not going to put myself in a situation where the dynamic is going to get hostile and I'm going to be fighting with them, because I still want to be able to maintain a relationship. So how I show up and how accountability for the things I say to them that might set them off. If I don't like the dynamic where they get set off and I get set off, it's not going to be them necessarily. It's going to be me. And I did that when I worked at, Mormon Stories. And if I don't like the dynamic of any workplace, I have to be able to have an exit plan so that I'm able to have my mental faculties as much as possible. And so I say that as a hardcore, labor leftists, who most people do not have the ability to choose. They have an unequal power dynamic with their employer, or in a patriarchy with the men in their life. And there's so many different faculties of dynamics that we can't. The system is too big, to be able to. And so it's the small ways of, where am I not taking accountability? Where could I show up better? And and furthermore, as a mom, they tell you in every type of parenting class will tell you that the way that you give an instruction to your kids is how they are going to kind of give it back to you. So I try to never scream at my kids, because I don't like bratty kids, and I don't expect them to be respectful to me if I don't treat them like human beings. So if there's so many parents who just will beat their kids if they say a mean word to them, right? My daughter told me to shut up today, and there's an instinct in me that makes me want to be like, I want to hurt you for saying something so disrespectful. But she learned that probably because of some flippant way that I might have treated her in the past, right? So the way that I treat, the way that I expect to be treated, I want to treat people and give that out too.
Yeah. I mean, there's... I guess the way if I had more quickly summarized better what I had said is, nobody is saying you're responsible for how other people made you miserable. However, you're the only person responsible for how you're going to be happy. There's no one else who's responsible for your happiness but you. Now, there are other people who decide to lend themselves, and I like helping make other people happy if I care about them and stuff, but it's not anyone's responsibility but your own.
And again, that all comes from the sense of autonomy that you're not really told about in religious systems. You're not told to, you have an idea of your ownership for sin and for mistakes, and that you go to a God to repent of them. But what about in just a regular secular life? How, when you're not feeling like you put your best self out there, how do you mend relationships? And usually it comes from a place of accountability, not to shame anyone.
Exactly.
It comes from how can I do better?
Right. How can I make my life better? But also the accountability thing's so fucking like, if it's somebody else's fault, when isn't it? When does that line stop? Right? Like, if you want to say the way I act in this situation isn't great or isn't ideal, but it's not my fault. This has to do with how this person treated me. But why would it stop there? That person who treated you that way, guarantee you there's someone else for them. And so this is one of those hard things where you're still responsible for it yourself. I talk about the transformed wife plenty. She is a monster. You know what she is before she is a monster? A victim. She absolutely is. Yep. And I often feel sad for her. Does that mean I don't attack her and I don't take down her bad ideas because she's a victim first? No, because she still is responsible for the shit she puts out there. And so it's kind of like, 100%. I'm not going to just say like this thing that I'm bad at, because it is true. Things that I am bad at, I can trace to my parents being terrible people. Right. But my mother was abused tremendously by her biological father and then the church. And my father's, it's pretty speculative, but the things that he describes as a great life aren't great. And so I can start blaming their parents or the people around them, and each of their parents get blamed. And so if we're always kicking the can down the road, instead of worrying about whose fault something is, you have to worry about you and your happiness and just take it from there. And it's both this thing that like has also helped me. I'm not going to say I would forgive, but I don't dwell on my parents as much anymore. If I get with my brother, like we bond over talking about, remember this fucking crazy thing? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like literally that's just siblings, like parents are of a certain generation where things were normal and now we know better and we do better. And there's no wrong answer for me, at least, that starts with like trying to learn, understand, see people where they're at, and hope that they see you back. It comes back to me is people just want to feel seen and validated and heard. Yeah. And where are the spaces with my parents, with various Mormons and stuff, where I'm like, I can meet you that space that you're at. I can see how this has been helped. What are the actions that now you're participating in that are causing harm to not just the people around you, but now you yourself? Yep. Like that's the real, you have to make it a self-interested perspective of like if I believe somebody is a narcissist who doesn't have any friends and they've isolated themselves because they've hurt every relationship, like I want you to get better as a narcissist. I don't just want you to stop harming people. I want you to have a fuller, more fulfilling life, If people actually meet real clinically narcissists, that's a stupid redundancy to say, I think they'd stop using this term so much. One of the crazy things about narcissists is, for example, they can't get better by going to therapy. It actually teaches them how to become better narcissists. It's one of these like things that the level at which people are happy to throw that term around, because it's sort of like, let's take all the nuance out. Everybody acts egotistically. No matter who you are, you have an ego, and sometimes it motivates you. In fact, it probably often motivates you. Now, how you articulate things, I'm, again, growing up, not necessarily knowing I was autistic the whole time, suspecting for a long time, always acknowledge that I have a way of communicating where literally just directly advocating for myself and not beating around the bush and playing these social manipulative games we all play, just saying that out loud would get me deemed as either egotistical or an asshole. And you're literally like, okay, sorry, I'll do what you guys are doing and just lie my way through it and fucking pussy coddle. That's not the word. Pussyfoot, coddle something, whatever. Pussyfoot,
anyway,
coddle.
I'm going to just go with pussy coddle. It's a totally different thing. Sounds like a type of fish.
I just thought of whatever the fisting version of feet play is, but yeah, go.
I don't like this example anymore. But anyway, yeah, pivot. The word narcissist is again, I don't care if people want to start using some terms colloquially, but if you want to use a term colloquially, but then issue the consequences based on you not using it colloquially, As in, like, I want to use the colloquial gaslight. And if I say somebody's a gaslighter, I want people to understand them as an abuser, because that's what gaslighting is. And yet most of the ways people use the word gaslighting isn't abuse. You're just mad at somebody disagreeing with you or thinking that you're wrong, or your perception is wrong, or your memory is wrong, or maybe you're stupid. And I'm sorry, I don't know you specifically, who right now I might be speaking to. I don't know if you're stupid or not, but statistics say you probably are. And so but that's if you want to use the word gaslighting to mean you're saying I'm remembering wrong, fine, if that's the colloquialism you want to use, but not if you then want to associate that person with gaslighting as though they are an abuser, like gaslighting actually means. Anyway, I'll stop pussy coddling around and read this one from Alex Williams. Alex Williams says, this seems so obvious from the outside. Can you speak to how the church masks it when you're inside? They don't mask it on the inside. You know way more about it on the inside. They teach you how to, they just teach you how to put it on the shelf, or how to think it's a good thing. When I was opposed to gay marriage, I thought I was doing them a favor. Like,
yeah.
There's no internal masking except for like the straight up lies. Like the closest thing to internal masking I would tell you is the Urim and Thummim, which we all were raised believing that Joseph wore a breastplate and magic glasses to translate the Book of Mormon, and they would tell us that the whole rock in the hat thing is just some stupid stuff people were saying to make it sound silly and obviously untrue. But no, it turns out that was true by his own admission. He put his face in a hat with a rock, and the words lit up in front of him. Not that the breastplate and the glasses are much better, but I don't see much internal masking, to tell you the truth. That's why we have so much to say when we come out of the church. We know. Any thoughts?
No, I think you summarized it perfect.
Thank you. There was no pussy coddling that time. I'm going to keep using that phrase now. It's going on a shirt. Do you want to read this one? I feel like I've talked so much.
Richmond dies. Can you clarify Mormons' position on black souls? I heard as a youth they said blacks had no souls. So, like we were talking about through the 20th century, so much to say, where to start. So I can't think of anything before probably the 20th century that really said, besides, like, there's the curse of Cain of why, black people have been, but as Mormonism developed and the narratives around where we came from were more hashed out, the idea of a pre-existence, a pre-mortal life is really integral to Mormonism. You could go on any day, you could go to a seminary building or a Sunday school lesson, and they'll be talking about the plan of salvation. Yeah. And part of that plan of happiness, is that we had a pre-earth life, and that Heavenly Father had a plan, and we sing primary songs as kids about it, that he had a plan, and he said that he was going to send down Jesus Christ, his only begotten firstborn son, to be the savior of mankind, and that we would be able to choose right from wrong. And then another spoke up, and that was Lucifer, one of his other children. And Lucifer says, no, I have a different plan. I'm going to make it so everyone has to get back to heaven, and that's supposed to be a bad thing for whatever reason. And Satan rebelled, and he said, peace out, Dad, I'm out of here. I'm going to go take 1/3 of these children, these spirit children, which another great John Larson episode about the plan of salvation, about how these numbers just are insane. Yeah, about we're talking billions and billions of souls, and Lucifer takes 1/3 of them that are then going to be turned into demons that will tempt those children, those spirit children that eventually get bodies that are the human race that we know today. Yeah. And that there were fence sitters in heaven that couldn't decide between Lucifer's plan or Jesus Christ's plan. And the fence sitters were supposedly given inferior bodies. Right. Again, most racist thing in the entire world, inferior bodies with handicaps like being of a darker skin. And that led to so much justifying of bigotry of that's why they need to be slaves. That's why they need to have Jim Crow laws, because if God thought, it's just one of those self-fulfilling things where they made up the narrative and then they self-justified it,
Right, the whole time.
So, They have souls. They were in the pre-earth life, but their punishment for not choosing the right, which again, this is such magical thinking, obvious. Like, it sounds like Greek mythology bullshit that somebody could make up, because it makes no fucking sense.
Fever dream.
How you could be in the presence of God and fence it between God's plan or like Lucifer's plan or whatever.
Right. Lucifer's pretty compelling. A third? That's a pretty compelling guy.
Yeah. And if you do the math of how many people have ever lived on Earth, let's say 100 billion of them, and 1/3 of them are supposedly in the pre-earth life would have been turned into demons, which now inhabit the earth right now. That's 9 demons per person, I think, something
That's a lot
like
of
that.
demons. That's a lot.
So we all have.
Wild too that they all agreed to do a part of God's plan, because God needs the temptation. You have to overcome temptation. You literally need temptation in God's plan. So like they're working against God by doing what God actually needs, the function he actually needs them to do. It's pretty wild. Pretty weird.
Yeah. And there's this whole idea that like Lucifer and his demons are like so maniacal and they're so cunning, and like everything about people who leave the church is because they got led away by Satan and stuff. But God, it's like that could be true, but your fucking God is really sitting on his ass for most of humanity. He's really not making any moves, but Satan's out there. He's got all kinds of moves.
And you definitely can't say that you have free will if you're being constantly bombarded by master manipulators.
Thank you.
Mormon free will.
Men have their agency was supposed to be the whole plan, but we have 9 demons for each of us to tempt us. What the fuck is that?
Mormon agency in general is also nonsensical, because it's literally like, all right, does God know everything that'll happen? Yep. Could we do something other than what God knows is going to happen? Nope. So we don't have agency. No, we do. No, you just said we don't, you dipshit. How?
Exactly.
How can God know? How, if we have no choice except the one we are already destined to make according to God's future memory, how do we have agency? Well, here's the thing. I'd like to bear my testimony that I know the church is true. Like that's basically the fucking thing. Anyway, Richmond.
You apply logic to it and it falls apart immediately. Yeah,
like the whole church. Richmond, though, whoever told you that blacks don't have souls in the Mormon church, first of all, I like clearly this came from somebody who had at least interacted with Mormons, because they were still calling them blacks. But no, that's not ever been a part of it that I am aware of, because they were sealing. You could be sealed as a servant in the early church days. Like you could basically be an eternal slave if you were black. So,
so you have to have a soul and a spirit to be a smith in the afterlife.
Yeah. Ghost slaves that got a soul. Anyway.
Ghost slaves.
They got souls. Quagma TV says, one of my ancestors was a prominent Mormon pilgrim and a carpenter. He nailed Brigham Young's coffin shut. That's my family's claim to fame, LOL. The only piece of advice I have is, maybe you already have, independently verify that story. Mormon stories of their heritage are 98% lies. Just made up. You should hear all the stories I had about black ancestors. I don't know if I should admit this, except I hate this brother, so I don't give a fuck. I have a brother who went on a scholarship by claiming heritage from Spain, that we were Spanish. Native American ancestors, black ancestors, Spain. Anyway, I did my 23andMe a couple years ago. We are 100% European. The closest to not white we have is a 0.1%, something like 16 generations back, somebody banged an Ashkenazi Jew. And that's it. That's literally, I come from as white as an Aryan brotherhood person wishes they were. I am the clan's wet dream, and all of those stories of pilgrim heritage amongst Native Americans and all this sort of shit, it turned out to be completely untrue. I do have ancestors who came to Utah in the early years, totally different ancestors. They actually came from England, was that small group of people that stupid. Or take a boat ride and across the country for something so obviously untrue. But anyway, totally the story. Yeah, it's the number of just made up, and your person was you. Did you know that your great-great-great-grandfather actually lit the torch that caused the fire at the expositor? Like it's all bullshit. It's like 98% made up.
Sorry, Quagma TV, for gaslighting you. I use it colloquially.
Quagma already said, I'm pretty sure you're right about it being a lie. I have in fact tracked the family tree to the Pilgrims. I don't know about the veracity of the stories though. Yeah, it's just sort of every Mormon family who has any Pilgrim claims thinks they know a lot about what those Pilgrims were up to.
Why are we saying Pilgrims? Do we mean pioneers?
Yeah, whatever. The pioneers. You're right. The pioneers. I feel
Precise
like Mormons
language.
do use the two interchangeably. Because the new world is the promised land, which is Utah. It ain't all that American. It's the West, the American West, where Jesus will come after he puts a single toe in Jerusalem and then he teleports over to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Another thing that makes you go, what? Holy shit. They believe what now? Yeah.
Fucking hey, it would only take like a 2 or 3 hour flight from both of where we are independently. Do you want to go visit the Garden of Eden with me later? Like, we could be there and back home within a day.
I know. Like the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden in the center of Missouri. Can you believe it?
Because you know
the actual altar that Adam prayed at, because the earth is 7,000 years old in Mormonism. That's the actual altar. You can visit it where Adam prayed at. Fascinating.
Who has ever been in Missouri and gone, God's country? Not one person.
Garden of Eden.
Missouri is a pile of shit. And if you live in Missouri right now, you already know I'm right. It smells bad in Missouri. Why does Missouri smell bad? Is there so much, like, every time I've been in Missouri, it just smelled like shit. Is there a lot of cows in Missouri? It's got to be cows. It's got to be rivers and cows. Just a terrible place. I'm just going to keep shitting on Missouri until somebody gets mad. I don't actually care. Missouri's fine enough.
Missouri and Arkansas are my most forgotten states. I'm sorry.
Sometimes I don't remember where Missouri is. I'm like, wait, it's right. Okay. And the river's there. And
we always have to find gratitude in this post-Mormon journey, and I am at least grateful that they could have settled. The Saints moved around so much. They're like, Kirtland's our new home, or should we be in Nauvoo, Illinois, or should we be in, Independence? And each one, they're like, this is the new stake that we're putting down for where our church is going to build. I'm so grateful, though, that it's at least, I fucking love Utah and its mountains and its beauty, and I wish that the Great Salt Lake wasn't going to dry up and, like, kill us all, but Utah is the best of all the places beauty wise that they could have chosen in my book. Maybe Malibu or something, but that's asking. I
think there are some more, but there's specific things, though. Part of that's also going to be we were raised to looking at pictures of Utah and seeing rock formation and stuff and associating it with beauty and such. Like we could have been raised differently and found other things more exciting, I suppose. I don't know. I like Utah. I'm just saying it's not necessarily at the top of my list. I'm not
a snowboarder, hence my jacket right now. Yeah. And cannot fuck with Utah's mountains. They're dope. All right.
Well, when the earthquakes come, and Yellowstone is gonna blow any moment, you and your family can come stay in my super lonely house for a little while, just to get away from.
All right, build us a bed.
That whole thing's going to be destroyed. I'm working on building a bed for the guest bedroom, right? I'm actually, so for my friends and people I want to do collabs with in this next year, I'm basically taking 2 of the rooms and I'm making one a guest office and one a guest bedroom, so that friends who can work remotely can do more of a working vacation where they don't actually have to take time off work to come out and do shit. Yeah. It's going to be a good time. I think. We'll see. I like the idea. Anyway, that's it. That's the last one. That's we're done. Yeah. I had a good time. Did you have a good time?
An amazing time. My posture, I will never sit up for a week now, but everyone please congratulate me that I literally stayed at this posture for 3.5 hours, Jimmy. How else do you wrap up your show? Just congratulating?
I don't plan anything. Bye. No,
thanks for everyone who stuck around. It's just
you should remind everyone where they can find you, and then we'll call it a night.
You can follow me at Nuance Ho on all the platforms, on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and sometimes I throw stuff on Facebook. That would really help me out. I pretty much make my part-time living right now just doing content. Hopefully I'll be able to move that up to full-time. So I'm been doing this for about 2 years. I love it, and this is my home. It's in a good niche, and if you have any need to reach out or anything like that, my DMs are open on Instagram. So I also have a Redbubble store, and I coined the phrase calling the church a Rocky Mountain Bible fan fiction sex cult. So I have a bunch of cool merch in my link tree for my Redbubble store under Nuance Ho. So just trying to monetize this talent over here. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Jimmy.
Was that was that your Jodie Foster impression? What was that?
Oh, that's just my humble talk voice. Where I'm just a small town girl who's just trying to make it in the big city, hoping to see her name in lights one day.
Dr. Lecter. Wait, is that Jodie Foster? Who is it? Who was in the Hannibal movie? Was it?
Sounds like Jodie Foster.
Julianne Moore. Clarice. You turn that perception back on yourself, Dr. Lecter. That's what I write.
Yeah.
That's
anyway.
Sorry.
Well, so that's me. That's what I'm up to. And
let's have a night where we just shoot our impressions at each other all night long. I'll start taking calls of Donald Trump. Okay, it's gonna be a good time taking your calls all night long.
Pretty good.
It's the only thing I can do.
Good.
All night.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay.
I can do a share. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. What else?
If I could turn back time.
If I could turn back time. If I could find a way.
I'm very impressed right now. Oh my goodness. Who else do you do? I'm just curious.
Oh, I'm trying to think. If anyone knows the Brady Bunch pretty well, I can do a good Jan impression. That's pretty much what I've done my entire life.
It's been years.
The old his name is George. Then Marcia comes in. George what? George Tropicana. He's a transfer student. He moved in the last week of school, and he thinks it's really special. She has this really great voice where she talks like this all the time.
I love it.
It's really beautiful and really sweet.
It's
and
really, yeah.
I use that. I kind of repurpose that for talk. That's how Mormon bloggers sound to me.
I was going to say,
listen to this spirit and follow the prophets, and now you'll be happy just like me.
I bet you could do if
various other words.
With very little practice. Oh, why are you frozen? Okay, you're unfrozen. With very little practice, I bet you could do a lot of Kristen Wiig characters. I feel like your voice is ready for it.
Now again.
No.
I'm gonna refresh.
Nah, it's still pretty bad. I guess it's good we were wrapping up the show. Wait, is it back? Are we good now? Damn.
Keep going. Keep talking. Repeat yourself.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Snow. I do a number of. I usually don't. I want to say my impressions sound spot on. I'd say I do more like I can nail just the way people say things. Like if I start talking like this, everyone knows, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is what yeah. I was saying I think with very little practice you could do most of Kristen Wiig's characters.
Yeah. Do you guys remember Gilly from SNL?
Please. Oh my God.
I can do all Kristen Wiig. That's true.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it so much.
Do you remember all of, you guys remember all of Mo Collins from Mad TV?
I never watched Mad TV. I wasn't allowed. Oh, you broke out. You broke out again.
Your audience will appreciate this one. Start. Start. Baby, said it wasn't very good, but I used to do it all the time.
If you broke out so much, I feel like it would have been great.
I tried to impersonate.
This is every other word I think I got. I'm so sad. This is my favorite part of the show, and I'm about to whip out Stewie Griffin and Charlie Day.
My internet
to no
is not
avail.
hearing you either, so we'll have to go out on this amazing high note.
We'll just wave. We'll just wave goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.